Douglas Wagner was out enjoying the beautiful weather about 15 miles north of Colorado Springs in El Paso County. I think a lot of people live here because we have such great weather most of the time. It's almost characteristic in Colorado for people to be outdoorsy. He started smelling something funny. And kind of buried loosely under some branches. And he sees a dead body.
The next day, Sergeant Joe Kenda meets with Detective Steve Gansel of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
So how's this new sheriff of yours?
I like him. Shaking things up, but in a good way.
I often meet with other detectives from other agencies, particularly El Paso County. We often work together on cases of common interest or cases that cross jurisdictional lines.
Here you guys go.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have been craving meatloaf like you wouldn't believe.
I absolutely love having lunch with Joe and to sit over and talk about what we have going in the sheriff's office.
So what's this new case you're working on?
The guy went hiking in the woods and found himself a dead body.
Wow. Looks bad.
My appetite has never been spoiled. You get very accustomed to dealing with death. That's what we do. It doesn't interfere with lunch, dinner, or anything else. It just doesn't. On one occasion, we ordered pizza. We had it delivered to the crime scene.
Happened in our jurisdiction, just outside of Woodmore, but we could use some of your help.
Sure. So what do you know so far?
Gansel explains the body was located in a remote wooded area.
The victim appears to be a black male. He's early to mid-20s. He's very well built, maybe a bodybuilder or athlete of some sort.
It was apparent that there was some effort to conceal the body.
All right, let's get this stuff off him.
Once all the debris was moved, the body was rolled over.
Oh, damn.
He is bound, both his wrists and his feet, with shoelaces. Not bound very tightly, but bound nonetheless. There are drag marks where this body is found. So this person is transported to that disposal site, most likely by automobile. The body is removed from the car, dragged to where it's left, and then covered up.
He's got no wallet on him.
Somebody really took their time with this guy.
Yeah, this is a targeted kill.
It was very apparent that the victim had been beaten severely about the face. Inside the mouth was material from some type of a jacket.
So was he beaten to death?
Nope, coroner says manual strangulation.
Interesting.
I thought so.
Manual strangulation says they know this person, and this person is enraged. He doesn't just want him to die, he wants to feel him die.
Coroner gives us time of death anywhere from 2 to 7 days ago. Other than that, I got nothing.
So how can I help?
I'd like to figure out who this guy is, run his fingerprints. I was hoping maybe you could ask around, see if anybody matching his description, what reported missing around them.
Consider it done.
Here's the rest of the case report.
The most complete records of people and criminals and so on are maintained by the Colorado Springs Police Department. So we very often share information with the Sheriff's Department.
If we don't find anything in our files, so reach out to the media.
I really appreciate that, Joe.
Whenever you're ready, guys.
Thank you. This one's on me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That afternoon, detectives review every missing persons report from the past month.
Since there is no identification on the remains, no documents of any kind, I'm checking to find someone who's of same physical appearance as this guy. Black male, probably in his 20s, 5'7" to 5'8", 150 pounds, athletic build.
Yeah, nothing here. How about you?
Nothing.
All right, let's try Crime Stoppers. Yeah, can you please put me through to KKTV?
In 1988, I was a news anchor for KKTV, the CBS affiliate in Colorado Springs. Back then, the only way the police department had to get out information to the public was through the news media and Crime Stoppers.
If you see any suspicious activity, please call us at Crime Stoppers.
Crime Stoppers is an organization within the city and county that maintains informant files for individuals who call the police and report intelligence information they've gathered from the street.
Crime Stoppers at this particular time was sort of a new and exciting thing that the news media was getting involved in. We had a specific Crime Stopper line that many times on a newscast, we would promote it and say, this is who they're looking for tonight, call this number. We might give a little synopsis of the crime.
After the robber left the Safeway store, witnesses saw him get into a vehicle and drive westbound on Colorado. The car was described as a Chevrolet Impala four-door, late 60s to early 70s, with a white roof and light green body. The car also had a Colorado temporary sticker attached to the rear window.
It was way before crime shows or things like that. This was a way for really the first time for the public to really get involved in a new media kind of sense and be able to call in and feel like they could be part of solving a crime. And for some people, it might have been because there was a reward offered in some cases. Other times it might be just because they wanted to do the right thing to help their community. And sometimes people get involved in Crime Stoppers, or at that time maybe, was because it made you feel, a little important, or, people want to get involved, whether they really had legitimate tips or maybe they thought they did or whatever. Because it was such a new thing then, people wanted to participate.
There's one particular informant who often would call to report that it all came to him in a dream. Oh, really? How useful that would be.
And then there are unfortunately, people who want to throw police maybe off the course or just want to play games or whatever. And so they might call in fake leads.
It's good and bad news. You get rumors. You get, I know a guy who knows a guy who heard a guy say, the ultimate hearsay, that sort of thing. Because you still have that draw of financial award. They're going to come forward with anything if they think it'll lead them to a few bucks.
The suspect in this case is described as a black male, 29 to 30 years of age, 6 foot 2 inches tall, with a thin mustache and a very muscular build.
If you have information, call Crime Stoppers. 634-STOP in Colorado Springs, 542-STOP in Pueblo.
So it's the unfortunate reality of the modern day that the police are forced to deal with some unsavory characters who can provide useful information. They're not named, they're provided with an identifying number, and they provide information that may or may not be extremely useful in criminal investigations. They're usually petty criminals, but they in fact are criminals. That's how they know what's happening. They know other criminals. And they listen to the activities on the street. They know what's going on. They know who has a gun. They know who's bragging about something they committed. They know all these things because they associate with them. So the point is, by making them anonymous, they're at no risk from their associates as being labeled as a police informant, because they're only known by a number. Their number only appears in the case report, so even the defense cannot provide the identity of the informant to the accused.
Please call us at Crime Stoppers. We need your help to stop these crimes.
Over the next 2 days, calls about Detective Gansel's John Doe begin to trickle in.
Good morning, Sergeant. Hot off the press.
Thank you.
I get Crime Stopper tips every morning, and I review those. The problem is, a lot of Crime Stopper tips aren't useful. But we get one informant that calls in that says she knows this guy, and his name is Doc. The last time she saw him was this date, and he looks like this. That lines up with our unknown victim. So we referred that to Gansel right away.
This is Gansel.
Hey, Steve, it's Kenda.
You may want to talk to this person.
Hours later, the caller meets investigators at the morgue.
You sure you're okay to do this?
The visual identification is one of the least chosen ways in law enforcement to identify a body. There is a high degree of anxiety, not knowing if in fact it is going to be the person they know. And that's going to be that everlasting view that'll never go away.
You ready?
Yeah.
Please.
Oh my God.
She yells out, "Oh my God, that's my friend Doc."
There's nothing worse than watching a loved one identify a body, but it must be done. Now we need to find out who this Doc is and why he ended up on a morgue table. The El Paso County Sheriff's Department not only had a whodunit, they had a who is it. We now have a witness who's come forward that says his name is Doc. So it is a beginning for the case.
So you don't know Doc's real name?
No, I haven't known him that long. Maybe a month.
How do you know him? Look, you can be honest with me. All I care about is catching whoever it is did this to your friend.
Okay, I scored H from him a couple times. And then we started hanging out.
She described Doc as coming from New York, that he had been in Colorado Springs a short time and was a street-level drug dealer. She had purchased heroin from him.
That's what got him in trouble. Something happened with the guys that he got the drugs from.
How do you know that?
The weirdest thing happened right before he disappeared.
She said she was minding her own business.
Where's Doc?
I don't know. I haven't seen him all day.
She was absolutely terrified of these two men.
So they drove off. And then a couple days later, I saw them at the bar. And they said, "Don't worry about looking for Doc. Took care of it."
Do you know any of their names?
No. All I know is they supply most of the dealers in the area. And I heard that they have connections to a Panamanian cartel.
It, of course, is entirely possible that he has crossed swords with these Panamanian drug dealers, and they took revenge by killing him. If you're in the drug business, they might even make a mistake and believe that you owe money that you don't own. It's a very bizarre world, which is why it's not in your interest to become involved in it.
Look, here's my card, in case you think of anything else. And again, I'm sorry for your loss.
Later that day, Gansel brings Kenda up to speed.
So maybe Doc owed these guys money. They track him down, beat him up, and ultimately strangle him.
Yeah, that would explain why he was found. Why they interrogated him.
Drug people have a strict code. Don't pay me, you steal my drugs, I'm going to kill you. And they do. They carry out that threat because the only thing they can survive on is their reputation. And if it's drug dealers in the plural, could this explain tying up and torture and punching and who knows?
So we're thinking to connect the Panamanian cartel?
Yep.
Oh, I got this.
Oh, thanks, man.
Keep the change.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
It isn't long before Gansel and Kenda encounter an unexpected setback.
This is Gansel.
Hi, this is Tina.
The witness called in and stated that she had received a telephone call from Doc. And Doc had informed her that he had left Colorado Springs.
He's in Texas, he's fine. Oh, great.
I'm so sorry. I really thought that the guy you showed me was him.
It's hard to identify a body in that condition.
It doesn't happen often, but it can happen that people see what they want to see.
Did Tina imagine this was her friend Doc because of all of the drugs she has floating around in her system, or is she just lying? Who knows? This is the world of delusions and illusions where drug users dwell. Maybe it's time to find some new friends, Tina.
It's very frustrating that you have a good lead that sounds like you're going to go somewhere, and then the very next day is gone.
Thanks for letting me know.
What's up?
Good news. Just heard back from Quantico. This fax just came in.
So the FBI ran the victim's prints in a national database and got a hit. This person is John Bernard Wilson, known as Johnny. He's 23 years of age.
Through the records, it showed that Johnny Wilson was living with his mother in Denver.
John Wilson?
Is this about Johnny? Did you find him?
Maybe it'd be better if I came inside.
When you stand at someone's door day or night and you're wearing a coat and tie and they haven't seen their family member sometime, then they generally know why you're there. It's very difficult.
I had high hopes for Johnny. Everybody did. Son was a boxer, a great boxer. He was gonna go pro.
She and her son Johnny lived in the state of Nevada, and he started boxing when he was 15 years old, and he had a real talent.
She said by the time he reached the age of 18, he was a heavyweight Golden Gloves champion within the state of Nevada.
She explains that until Johnny Wilson could fight his way up to the more lucrative matches, he had to work as a bouncer to pay the bills.
And that's when it happened. It was just bad luck.
Get outside. Get out your face. Man, I ain't scared of you. Hey guys, chill out. Chill out. Chill out. That's what you do. That's what you get out of here.
During the course of breaking up a fight, he was shot in the chest. She said the bullet remained in the chest. The doctors didn't remove it.
That limited his breathing ability and his ability to stay in excellent shape.
He was forced to stop boxing. After that, he was just lost.
When you have a dream like that and you're on your way and it's taken away from you so suddenly at a young age, it's going to affect your life in ways that you can't even imagine.
He got on drugs. So we moved out here to Denver to get him away from all of that.
Did that work out?
Yeah, he was clean. But he was still just so down on himself until he ran into one of the boxing coaches from the USA boxing team.
Johnny Wilson.
Yeah.
I knew it, man. How you
It's
doing?
me. I'm good.
How are you? I will never forget your knockout at the Golden Gloves Championship, man.
Man, that was amazing. That was a long time ago. It was
Yeah,
incredible.
man, it was incredible. It was alley shuffle. 1, 2, on it.
Oh, wow.
Bang, man. You hit him.
Damn.
Yeah, you training here in Denver?
No, I gave that up a while ago.
Johnny told that guy about his health, and he was convinced he could help my son.
The mother also said that he was told if he could overcome his breathing issues with the right kind of coaches, he could perhaps resume his career.
So he then moved himself down to Colorado Springs and began to train once again.
She said she was so happy that her son had found this new lease on life. But about a month ago, she started to sense that something was wrong.
What do you mean?
He was sounding really anxious on the phone. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong. I decided to find out myself.
Shonda drove down from Denver and finally found him. It was apparent that he was back on drugs.
It's got to be very sad and disheartening for a mother who had so much hope in her son to see him fall so quickly.
He looked terrible. I tried to get him to come home with me. He said he had something to take care of first. That was the last time I saw him.
Do you remember any of the people that he was with?
No, just some addicts, I think.
Why would she know? Her only concern was him.
Please, detective, you find the man that did this to my son.
I promise you we're going to do the best we can.
Knowing that we have a person living off the street, the chance of solving this one are becoming slimmer every day.
But lucky for Gansel, Kenda has a new lead for him.
This is Gansel.
Hey, Steve, it's Kenda.
Hey.
I got information from this woman. It says her husband and another guy might be involved in the killing.
We got a Crime Stoppers tip from a woman, and she tells this long story about how her husband and another guy are probably the ones that are involved in the death of Johnny Wilson.
I'm telling you, Steve, she had a lot of information we haven't put out to the media yet.
So when you get a Crime Stoppers tip that says a certain thing about the remains or a certain thing about the method of death, you know that's good information because nobody knows that except the police. The point is, you have to understand that bad guys read the paper also. They watch the TV news, just like you do. We do not release all the information about a murder case to the media. It's not because we're trying to avoid anything. It's because we're trying to restrict information known only to the killer.
I think she might be the real deal.
I said, it just smells right, very right. And you need to get on this and bring in this woman, Lynn Chapman.
Miss Chapman, I'm Detective Gansel.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find someone to watch my girl on such short notice.
Mike, would you be so kind and keep an eye on her while we talk?
Okay.
Thanks so much. Please have a seat.
I'm not sure where to start with all this. This involves my husband, Reggie. He saw that Crime Stoppers report and just went berserk.
She explains that her and her husband were living in this motel due to financial difficulties. They were trying to get back on their feet.
Why they gotta be putting for the news?
Was that Johnny they were talking about?
How am I supposed to know?
Was that Johnny?
You need to mind your damn business.
She said he's extremely physically strong, sometimes doesn't know his own strength, in her words. At one point, she said he put his hands around her neck so forcefully that she thought he was going to kill her, and she decided she needed to get away from him.
She went to her mother's house to seek safety. It was apparent that Lynn Chapman was in fear of her life.
All right, let's back up a minute. Why would you ask your husband if the victim on the news was Johnny?
Because I think I was there when my husband killed him.
Well, do tell Lynn, we've been hoping for someone like you to show up. We have an amateur boxer, Johnny Wilson, who has fallen into the drug world, who winds up getting murdered.
I'm really sorry.
We've already had one informant who completely took back everything she said to us. Now we have another informant that sounds like a really good one.
We have somebody stating that her husband was in fact the one that committed the homicide.
She also says that because they've had these problems in her marriage, he choked her once and she thought she was going to die. Now that's an important statement, because what is he doing to her? Manual strangulation. What did somebody do to Johnny Wilson? The very same thing.
So now the investigation is becoming more and more focused.
So how does Reggie know Johnny?
We met him at the motel where we were living. Him and Johnny had similar bad habits.
Which are?
Drugs. Reggie and Johnny do coke together.
Lynn Chapman described Johnny as a low-end drug user, drug supplier. He was a known associate to Reggie as to be able to supply drugs to him.
I think my husband and one of his friends gave him some money to buy some because the night all this went down, I heard him shouting about it.
She describes that she and her daughter were in the back bedroom of this motel room.
Where's the money, Johnny? I told you, man, I don't have it. You're a liar. What you think, I'm stupid? You're dead to me.
Mommy, I'm scared.
Honey, it's okay. There's nothing to be scared of.
Hey, chill out. I need my money now.
Keep Lydia away. Can you... What the hell's going on?
Don't worry about it. Go back in the room.
Come on down, man. Go get your money, man. Oh, I swear to God, Johnny.
What's wrong?
I think they're playing a game, honey. Come on, let's go back to bed. I closed the door, but things just got worse.
She turned the TV in the room on to occupy her daughter, but she's still crying with all this disturbance going on.
After about an hour of what she describes it as some type of an altercation going on, it becomes quiet.
She opens the door and looks.
We just teaching him a lesson. He just passed out. We're gonna throw him out in the cold. Now go to bed.
She sees Johnny wrapped up in 2 blankets, and there's blood all over the carpet. She then sees Reggie and his friend putting Johnny in the trunk of a maroon 4-door car, and they drive off.
So, who was the guy that was in the room with Reggie and Johnny?
Jerome.
Do you have a last name?
She doesn't know Jerome's last name. She thinks he might be in the Army or he was recently out of the Army. She doesn't really know that much about him.
So, what about Reggie? Is he still at the motel?
I guess. I moved out after he got physical with me. We've been living at my mother's, but I'm really scared he's gonna come looking for me.
This story that she tells Genzel makes absolute perfect sense for what someone would do trapped in the circumstances in which she found herself. Her concern is her family. It makes her believable, in my opinion.
Look, I promise you we're going to look into this, okay? Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us.
It was apparent that Lynn needed safety. We contacted the Colorado Department of Human Services. Arrangements were made to put Lynn into a safe house.
So they have a place to stay where no one knows where they are until they can get Reggie into custody and also identify and arrest Jerome.
With no time to spare, investigators head over to Reggie's last known address.
Let's go to the motel room for 2 reasons. We may not find Reggie, but we're certainly going to find bloody carpet. That's an important piece of evidence.
You understand you have a guest staying here by the name of Reggie Chapman?
We did. He checked out early this morning.
I'd like to see his room.
Yeah, all right, sure.
So the manager takes his master key. We open the door and we look in this room.
Much to our surprise, the carpet that was once in there had been removed.
No carpet of any kind. It's a bare floor. So where's the bloody carpet? Where's the carpet? Was there ever any carpet? Did she make that up?
And she opened the door with high expectation, looking at it and go, great, now what? Where did it go? It's just one more leg that you just have to keep going.
We took the carpet out this morning after Mr. Chapman moved out.
Why?
Unfortunately, a lot of these tenants trash the carpets. That's why we buy the really cheap ones. This one is pretty gross. We just took it out a few hours ago.
So where's the carpet now?
In the dumpster, I guess.
You've got to be kidding me.
We look in the dumpster, and it's empty.
I guess the trash man must have picked it up already.
So now, knowing that it was within such a short time frame, the odds of being able to find this carpet was still very high. Just had to find out which company picked it up, which dump it went to, and then go to that dump and find that carpet.
There's a transfer station not far from here. Our garbage usually ends up there before going to the county landfill, so I don't know if that helps.
I hope that's not a new suit you got on.
I looked at Genzel and I said, I think you're going dumpster diving.
Wasn't exactly on my agenda when I got dressed this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Are you going to find it? Maybe. Are you not going to find it? That's also maybe. But you have to try. You can't just throw up your hands and say, well, they threw it away. Let's go look.
Detective Steve Genzel and his team are faced with the unpleasant task of wading through a mountain of garbage.
Gentlemen, the motel manager was nice enough to give me a sample from one of the other rooms. This is what we're looking for. No sense in putting it off. Let's get to it.
I had no idea that there were that many tons of trash. So we started walking.
Being a homicide detective, everyone thinks it's very wonderful. Oh my God, it's this really great mystery. A lot of it's just nasty, dirty, foul-smelling, filthy work.
There were dead animals and sewage, everything you could think of. The day was getting warmer and the smell was so thick. It was horrendous.
To get to the bottom of something, you have to go looking in places you wouldn't spend any time in if you could avoid it.
There's no escape, not even for lunch.
It's got to be here somewhere.
The life of a homicide detective is not glamorous. Sometimes you have to do nasty things to solve a crime.
But you're here for a reason. The reason is to find out who killed Johnny Wilson. That's the motivation.
After 5 hours of searching, a glimmer of hope finally appears.
Guys, over here.
We look down, it's like, Eureka! So I said, it's gotta be our carpet. It just has to be.
That is a match.
Thank God. Can we go home now?
Help me get this to the lab.
We took it to our crime lab, and the blood samples that were found and the blood samples of Johnny Wilson that were recovered from the autopsy did match.
Gansel now has enough evidence for an arrest warrant, but at the moment, he only knows Jerome's first name, and Reggie Chapman is in the wind.
The next thing is now to find Reggie. He is the named assailant, the person that Lynn identifies as being involved in the assault of Johnny Wilson.
So in his search for Reggie, Gansel goes to Fort Carson. He's former employee of the United States Army.
Come in. Sergeant Courtney, Sheriff's Office would like to have a word with you.
I'm Detective Gansel. Nice to meet you.
I learned the previous roommate to Reggie Chapman was Donald Coatney, and Coatney was asked to come down to the investigative division of the Army.
I understand you knew Reggie?
Yes, when I first met Private Chapman, I liked him. I say he had the respect of all his peers.
He describes that he started getting into cocaine. His attitude changed. He wouldn't take orders. He went AWOL.
Donald said that he had assaulted his wife and they sent him to the military jail on Fort Carson.
That led to a dishonorable discharge. I haven't seen him since.
He has no idea where he would be. He doesn't know any other friends he may have. And he never heard of anybody named Johnny Wilson.
We're also looking for someone he used to hang out a lot with, a guy named Jerome.
Jerome? Nah, no idea.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Reggie had a funny habit of calling people by their middle names, so maybe Jerome is like a middle name.
That's interesting. I'll look into that, thank you.
No problem.
Dismissed.
Meanwhile, Kenda has continued to feed the press updates about the case, and his persistence finally pays off.
We get a Crime Stoppers tip that comes in, and I immediately get a hold of Gansel. We got another thing here looks pretty good.
This guy claims one of the suspects is an ex-Army guy named Joey Brown.
Haven't heard that name, but Reggie was in the Army too.
Hey, by any chance, did your caller happen to mention
Middle name for this Joey Brown?
Jerome? I got his address here if you want it.
Oh, yeah.
This could be the Jerome that we've been looking for. We went to where he lived.
I've actually got to get to work pretty soon.
And informed him that there had been a Crime Stopper tip, that he was involved in the murder of Johnny Wilson.
No, man, you are wrong. I wouldn't even be involved in something like that.
Maybe you saw something but didn't participate?
No. I mean, I don't even know a Johnny Wilson.
Joey stated he didn't have any involvement with him whatsoever.
But yeah, I'm sorry to say it, man. I got to get out of here or I'm going to be late for work. Is there anything else you need from me?
You mind if I take a picture of you? I'll clear you through the investigation a lot faster.
Sure.
Thanks.
Cool.
The intent of taking a photograph was to show that then to Lynn Chapman.
While Gansel isn't sure Joey Jerome Brown is his guy, the color of Joey's car catches his attention.
Knowing that Lynn Chapman saw the body wrapped in blankets in a maroon four-door vehicle, now everything is starting to come together.
So now Gansel contacts his star witness, Lynn Chapman.
Do you recognize anyone in this photo?
I think that's him, but I'm not positive.
You're not positive?
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Without positive identification, the likelihood is yes, but likelihood doesn't fly in a court of law.
Thanks so much for coming in. Hang on a second. Is your daughter here at the station with you?
Yes.
Didn't you say that she was there the night that you saw it happen?
Yes, my 6-year-old Lenny was standing right next to me.
Suddenly, Gansel sees another way forward.
We asked Lynn, would you mind if we see if your daughter can recognize anyone to supplement what you said?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Great.
So we bring the daughter in, explain to her that these aren't bad guys, these are good guys. You don't want to traumatize a little kid. We asked, is anyone in this photograph the same person that you remember being with your dad?
That man there. He was the one with my dad yelling at the other man.
You're positive?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a child who supports what her mother has been saying all along, that her daddy and this fellow named Jerome were yelling and screaming at a man named Johnny. Well, they were doing more than that, darling. They were killing Johnny. This case has come a long way.
That man there.
Thank you.
Once that identification is made, it's time to sign an arrest warrant for Reginald Chapman and for Joey Jerome Brown for the crime of first-degree murder.
As El Paso County Sheriff's deputies head out to arrest Jerome, SWAT is assembling outside an address where Reggie is believed to be hiding.
A woman calls Crime Stoppers and says that she knows Reggie Chapman and that he confessed to her that he killed someone, and she knows where he is staying.
Knowing that we're dealing with an individual who is excessively violent, arrangements were made with the motel staff to know which room that he was in.
Let's get him.
Sheriff's Department!
It's quite common when somebody opens the door and sees you, their first response is to close the door, as if that's somehow going to make you all go away.
Breacher up!
But what it makes happen is they crush the door.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Put your hands behind your back!
It's immediate surrender. And they took this guy into custody by showing overwhelming force.
Reggie Chapman immediately stated he wanted an attorney, didn't want to make a statement.
Meanwhile, across town, Jerome is about to have his own encounter with law enforcement.
Yeah, man. I'll be there soon. All right.
Joey Jerome Brown.
He was also arrested without incident
Yeah, mine back.
and taken into custody.
But before they head back to the sheriff's office, something else catches their eye.
They notice his maroon car in the parking lot.
They look inside of the vehicle and see stain remover, some nylon cord, a 7-inch knife.
Forensics, major crimes, and a record to tow his car, please.
Ultimately, all this was taken into evidence.
With Reggie Chapman not talking, Gansel focuses on his alleged accomplice.
Joey Jerome Brown waived his right to remain silent and offered information to assist through the investigation.
I'll tell you the whole story. I don't care.
Let's hear it.
He comes forward and he says what happened. His theory is, I didn't kill him. Reggie did. That's his motivation.
This whole thing started because Johnny said he was going to pick up some coke. He wanted to know if we wanted him to pick up some for us as well. We scraped together $100.
And what happened?
We waited a few days, and Johnny never showed up with our stuff.
Jerome says they became extremely mad and felt that they were ripped off. After several days of Reggie and Jerome searching the streets for Johnny, they finally found him.
What's up, Johnny?
What's up, man?
What's going on, man? What's up, fellas?
Yo, you got my stuff?
Yeah, man. It's coming, man. Don't worry about it. My guy's just waiting for another shipment. That's all.
Anybody that buys drugs knows he's lying. They assume he used the money to buy drugs, which he's now got in his system.
You gonna get my stuff? Money, man. I'm not playing with you no more, man.
I ain't want no trouble.
Jerome explains that Reggie wanted to move their conversation inside, but tensions only escalated from there.
Come on, Reggie, take it easy. I'll get you your stuff, man.
Don't tell me to take it easy, punk.
Be patient, man. My guy always comes through, man. Come on. So we cool? Be patient. Just be patient out.
I need my money now.
What are you doing, man?
Reggie starts knocking him around, making demands, threatening him. He's gonna kill him.
Man, ain't got no money, man. Let me go, man.
Hey, yo,
ain't got no money.
check your shoes, man. Check your shoes.
It's a very common thing for street people to hide things in their shoes. I don't know why, but they do.
Yo, 31 bucks, that's all. That's all you got?
Jerome claims that's when Lynn came out and made the situation worse.
But that woman was crazy.
Nah, man, you just don't get it, man.
What the hell is going on in here? Just give Reggie his money. My kid's in there scared and can't sleep because of all this yelling and screaming. Just give him his money and get the hell out of here.
It's none of your business.
Not only did Johnny take money, but now he insulted Reggie's wife. That's the last straw. Johnny was a great boxer. Now he's just a dope addict. And he's a shadow of his former self, and he can't overcome Reggie.
All right, Reggie. Reggie, chill, man. Chill out, man. Reggie!
And he continues to strangle him until he goes limp.
The deed was done.
What did you do, man?
Get a blanket, man. We gotta get his ass out of here.
They wrap up Johnny, and they take him out and stuff him in the back of the maroon four-door.
They drive up to Woodmore, north of the city. In a remote area, they take the body out of the trunk, they dump him, and they cover him up with leaves and branches and whatever else they can find.
I really didn't think that Reggie was capable of doing something like that. I really didn't.
Jerome's choice to come forward turned out to work for him. He pled guilty to 1 count of first-degree assault and 1 count of accessory to crime, and was sentenced to 4 years in prison.
Reggie Chapman is found guilty of second-degree murder.
Night falls like a curtain cut too fast, the kind that leaves the audience gasping in the dark. The alleys of Hanoi hold their breath. Motorbikes thin out, neon flickers, rain pushes the street into a smear of color, red taillights, green pharmacy signs, a white flash on wet stone. Headline-ready silence settles. Cold case, year 1999, last seen 2217, rain-drenched boulevard, the city pretending not to notice. The file says solved in block letters now, stamped and boxed for closure, but the edges of that stamp bleed like fresh ink, and beneath it the paper hums, a low fever of doubt. Solved on paper is not solved in bone, not solved in a street that still looks away when it hears the soft tread of memory coming. She had a name that fit easily in a whisper and a laugh that clicked like porcelain cups on saucers. 19 years old, first-year journalism student, a habit of collecting strange headlines like Riverstones. Missing taxi receipts lead to minister's bookkeeper. 2 keys, 1 lock, no house. Map seller claims road to nowhere. Her notebook ran hot with scribbles, arrows, coffee rings, and the turtles that keep watch in Huanquim Lake. She called the turtles good luck. The lake called back in ripples. On the last page of that notebook, a date circled twice, November 4th, 1999, and a word in block capitals, phantom. The detectives would argue over that word for 26 years. Was it a source, a street name, a ghost she chased into a corner, or a headline she never got to write? The night she vanished is a montage the city plays on loop. A narrow diner with fogged windows, a bowl of pho cooling too fast to finish, the muted TV murmuring a news anchor's practiced concern. The clock above the counter hiccups at 21:58. She pays and tucks the change into her shoe, habit born of crowded buses and careless pockets. Outside, the rain leans in. Headline: Mysterious downpour shrouds student's final steps. She hurries down Trang Thai, then into the dimmer seam of a side street. Last known image: a reflection in a puddle shaped like an eye, her umbrella a black iris, her face a tiny moon sucked into the drain. Morning comes with a siren's thin needle and the first of 1,000 bad guesses. She is late for class. Shock ripples, but this is Hanoi, where lateness breeds like humidity. At noon, a roommate frowns over a bed still smoothed from the night before. At dusk, the mother calls. No answer. Then calls again until the phone warms to the touch. Midnight. Matt tick beyond. The police take a report. It is precise and bloodless. The mother's voice is neither. There is a checklist for disappearances. Last calls, last cash withdrawals, last known argument, last kindness, last song played. Each line becomes a trench. Detectives pace its edges and stare down into a silence dense with maybes. A vendor on Hangda swears she saw the girl buying batteries. A XE-ohm driver insists he took her south, but his description of the passenger changes with the weather. Brown coat, blue coat, no coat. A pharmacist remembers a face, but her memory is attached to the wrong day, the wrong rain. Every tip is a headline without a story to live in. The word phantom hovers like a watermark in the room where the detectives argue about coffee and the dignity of not knowing. The father turns the city into a grid. He walks it cell by cell, red string pinned from market stalls to canal bridges. He buys a cheap tape recorder and leaves messages wherever he can't knock on a door. If you have seen my daughter, please call. He says her name into the tape like a prayer that rewrites itself each time. Behind him, a rumor grows legs. Headline: Shock in community. Student reporter vanishes after digging into forgotten case. Forgotten case? Which case? It doesn't matter to the rumor, which breeds in breath and grows fat on fear. In the days after, the notebook appears like a small bird in a bigger storm, found at the bottom of her bag left at the diner. A waitress, shaky with the responsibility of noticing, brings it to the station. I thought it might be nothing, she says, meaning she hoped it was nothing. The front page is cracked with heat and rain, but inside the ink is fierce. Names with no names. The fisherman, the widow with 2 doors, the man who sold maps to missing streets. Phantom. Arrows cross other arrows. A pattern is there, insisting. The lead detective rubs his thumb over the paper. A whisper rises from it. Follow. He looks back to 1999, then looks further back because the past is only obedient if you chase it. 3 years earlier, a series of burglaries had raked through the old quarter, surgical and peculiar. Nothing flashy taken. No televisions dragged downstairs, no jewelry boxes torn. Instead, keys, maps, coil notebooks, door measurements, blank receipts. The case went nowhere. Headlines made jokes. Thief with a stationery fetish. Paper trail ends with no paper. But the notebook says otherwise. Next to the burglary dates, the girl has drawn a ring around a handful of missing persons reports that never made front page. Not many, spaced like coughs in a quiet room. A tailor's apprentice. A math tutor who left a bicycle locked to a fence. A woman who sold hairpins near Dongsuan, last seen closing one of her 2 doors, the wrong one, according to a neighbor who never forgave herself for noticing too late. Cold case. Years pass. The father ages into a man the city knows by his shoes. The mother coils into the kind of silence that rearranges furniture in the mind. The file thickens into a shape administrators respect and detectives dread. A young officer photocopies it for practice, the way a musician warms fingers on scales. Photocopies become their own archive. The paper begins to smell like an old library that remembers all the answers but refuses to say them out loud. Then a map seller surfaces in 2007, right where the notebook would have you look, on a corner that used to be another corner, the city's geometry forever rephrasing itself. He brings a bundle of rolled maps to the district office. He says he's tired. He says the maps don't lie, but people do. He says he sold a set to a quiet girl in 1999, the kind of quiet you'd notice after she left, the kind that leaves the bell above the shop door ringing longer than it should. He remembers she asked for roads no one wants until they need them, which made him laugh and then stop laughing. He remembers she paid with damp bills, rain on her hair, a notebook that kept sliding open to the same page. Phantom. He has kept his receipt book all these years because he is the opposite of a thief. The book is full of blank carbons, each blankness a claim that something once was written and is no more. The detectives take the book the way people take a newborn, careful and afraid of deserving it. DNA arrives like a new alphabet the old police are forced to learn. They swap their cigarettes for pipettes and pretend the future doesn't smell like bleach. A lab technician with a birthday younger than the case blows dust off a scrap of umbrella fabric kept in an evidence bag that should have been tossed. Static clings to all the wrong places in the room when she opens it. A thread coughs up a touch that isn't the girl's. It isn't anyone's in the system, but it hums near to a profile taken from a thumbprint on a taxi window from 2001. The taxi case went nowhere back then. A drunk fare, an empty threat, a window wiped half clean. Now the half that survived pricks the lab's finger like a thorn saying not yet. Headline: Old taxi thumbprint resurfaces. Case files stir. Meanwhile, the father is still walking. He crosses the long BN bridge at dawn, the city opening beneath him like a fan. He leaves one red thread tied to the lattice and watches it vibrate with traffic stories. He thinks of keys and doors and how a city is a chorus of locks turning. He thinks of his daughter's hands, small and sure, turning the right key in the wrong door, or the wrong key in the door that wanted to open anyway. He keeps a promise the city never asked him to make, to count the steps between the places she loved and the places she feared. He says her name to the bridge, and the bridge keeps it. In 2015, a rumor grows bones. A widowed landlord with 2 doors, to the street, to the alley, dies without a will. In the mess that follows, tenants argue, cousins appear, an attic is cleared. In a cardboard box, maps, receipts, coil notebooks, keys with tags that say things like Blue Gate and North Hinge. A tenant posts a photo of the box online. What is this? The internet tags it creepy, and moves on, but not before a retired detective sees the keys. He knows the shape of old ghosts. He downloads the photo and drives back to a station that has changed uniforms and coffee brand, but not the smell. He says, "Open the file." A young officer says, "Which one?" He points to the shelf where the thick ones go to nap. Headline, Bo Hoso de Song. They find the box where they always find boxes that matter, right in front of them, pretending to be unimportant. The keys are in no order because order is a story we tell the mess to make it behave. But a tag reads D4, blue. The girl's notebook mentions D4, blue gate, wrong door. A detective opens his mouth and realizes he has nothing respectful to say to a coincidence this loud. He closes it and lets the box keep talking. Receipts account for everything but intent. Maps show a path but not the step that chooses it. The notebooks are blank, the kind of blank that means they were once full or never needed words. In the spine of one, a hair, too long to be his, too human to be a mistake. The lab says the hair has a tale to tell but not the language yet to tell it. By 2024, the word solved begins to sniff around the case like a stray dog that wants a home but doesn't trust doors. A man is brought in quiet, a shadow with a pulse. He is neither villainous nor forgettable. He is simply the person you don't look at twice when you pass him because your eyes are busy being eyes. He once lived on the second floor above a corridor of closed shops with slogans painted shut. He once sold keys, then maps, then silence. He claims his innocence with the confidence of someone who has practiced. The evidence is a chorus that cannot harmonize, a partial DNA echo, a key tag that fingers him without pointing, a receipt that lists nothing and is still guilty of implication, a hair that might say his name if pulled harder through the machine. The headline writes itself and refuses to pick a font. Arrest shocks community, cold case solved, then in smaller letters, or solved enough. The mother sits in a chair and tries the word solved on her tongue. It doesn't dissolve like sugar. It sits like a pill you're told to swallow without water. She looks at the photo on the stand, her girl in mid-laugh, head turned as if someone called her name, and she didn't mind answering. The father brings home the same brand of tape recorder he used to carry. He plays the old messages he left around the city to no one in particular. The tape hiss is a kind of rain. He hears the bell above the map seller's door ring longer than it should. He hears the bridge keep a promise. Case closed is not a spell. It does not turn the city's nightlights back to ordinary. It does not quiet the puddles that remember faces. It does not unring bells or unteach a father how to count steps between love and fear. It simply files the paper under S and hopes the drawer is deep enough to hold what it pretends to hold. Outside the station, a headline pinned to a kiosk wrinkles in the humidity. Hanoi, 1999, cold case solved, arrest shocks community. People stop, read, frown, nod. They want their streets to be streets again, not corridors. They want doors to be doors again, not questions. But a question remains, trim as a wire. Why the word phantom circled twice, written as if the pen were being watched? Why the keys tagged for doors no one remembers owning? Why the receipts with nothing purchased kept like trophies for a collection of emptiness? Why the map of the lake with a tiny turtle drawn where the water is deep and the legend scrawled good luck and then crossed out? The file may rest, the city can't. The voice that tells this story keeps its pace quick because if it slows, it might hear something breathing in the pause. It might hear shoes crossing a bridge in the morning. It might, in the hush between rain and siren, hear a girl ask very softly if anyone is still looking. Cold case. Solved. Shock in community. Mysterious clue. Strange pattern. A chorus of headlines the city hums when it doesn't want to sleep. The rain returns. Not hard, not soft, just enough to turn the streets into mirrors that tilt the world. Somewhere a key turns, and a door opens to nothing in particular. Somewhere a map unfolds, and the road leads only to the edge of itself. Somewhere a receipt is written for an item that cannot be purchased, certainty. The voice doesn't stop. It can't. It moves with the motorbikes, threads the alleys, skims the lake where luck looks like a shell rising for air and vanishing again. It says her name in a way that means both before and after. It lets the stamp that says solved dry but not too dry. It leaves the drawer an inch open. It keeps the city awake. Morning presses its ear to the city and hears what it always hears. Scooters coughing awake, shutters rattling up like eyelids, a radio far off announcing weather like a rumor that might behave. But beneath that routine, a different broadcast threads itself through Hanoi. Solved, arrest, shock, relief that looks too much like fatigue to celebrate. The newsstand sells out of papers by 8:03. Someone circles the headline with a blue pen and tapes it to a glass door. The tape surrenders in humidity, and the page slumps like a tired flag. The station's hallway swallows footsteps and returns them late. In the interview room, a camera blinks its tiny red eye. On. The suspect sits as if his body remembers these chairs, this light that tries to erase shadows and fails. He is not a monster. He is not a myth. He is the arithmetic of almost kind, almost helpful, almost invisible. Once he took impressions of keys for landlords who didn't want to meet tenants after dark. Once he traced maps for tourists who wanted routes without surprises. Once he learned to keep receipts because everyone asks for proof when you are playing. His hands are what the camera loves, clean, dry, steady. They fold and unfold with deliberate boredom, as if the most interesting thing in the room is the sound of skin smoothing over its own stories. The detective across from him has a voice that dribbles like old coffee. He uses it to ask questions he already knows are too neat. Where were you on November 4th, 1999? Do you know this woman? Do you remember selling maps to a girl with wet hair and a stubborn pen? Have you ever seen this key tag? He slides photos like cards in a slow poker that never pays out. The suspect's answers are a grammar of avoidance. Yes, but not her. No, but not never. I did, but not like that. He remembers rain and a bell and a notebook that would not stay shut. He remembers drawing a circle on a map of streets that have since been renamed. He remembers nothing that would make a mother breathe easier. When they say the word phantom, something in his eyes changes, nothing dramatic, only a soft recoil like a dog who hears the friendlier syllable inside a scold. He says he knows streets called that, corners called that, people called worse. He says someone scribbled that on his shop door once. He says ghosts are a way to avoid admitting to doors you never learned. The voice that tells this keeps its speed because memory will sprawl if allowed to stretch. It sweeps you back to 1999, to the last legible hours. She leaves the diner with the notebook in her bag and the word in her pocket. Phantom. Like a coin you rub for luck until the face erases. She takes the route that is almost a habit, but not quite, a detour born of curiosity or caution. Past a shop that sells only one color of thread, past a stall that hides cigarettes behind jars of candy, past the blue gate with the paint that flakes like sky skin. The neighbor who never forgave herself hears the quick steps and the small punctuation of an umbrella tapping its own impatience against her calf. Time slows for no one, but it pauses for the small disasters it knows will matter later. Tap, 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 silence. That silence has been measured and remeasured like a crime scene that refuses to submit to rulers. 4 seconds, 7, enough for a key to slide into a lock that should not open, enough for a breath to realize it needs another and not get it. Inside the station, a younger detective lays photographs on a board that still smells like the new of office supplies. Umbrella fabric, the partial thumbprint from the taxi window, the key tag from the attic box with D4 blue, the map seller's curled receipts that admit nothing and refuse to quit. He strings red thread between anchors until it looks less like a case and more like a net meant to catch a fish named Y. He writes in fat marker, pattern, then crosses it out and writes, person, then crosses that out and writes, place. When your nouns are slippery, verbs become weapons, search, compare, knock, revisit, call. He calls the father. The father answers on the second ring like a man who has practiced picking up grief without letting it break. They walk the route together, detective, father, shoulder to shoulder, not because they are friends, but because the street is narrow and someone's trash takes up half the space. The father narrates the city as if it has chapters only he remembers. Here a shoe repairman who never learned to tie laces for children. Here a balcony where pigeons once nested in a planter meant for basil. Here a door painted blue, then brown, then blue again. A door that leads to stairs that lead to rooms that once held a widow whose 2 doors were a lifestyle and a trap. He tells the detective about the way his daughter would lean into a story until it leaned back. He tells him about the turtles at the lake, about the map that crossed out, good luck. He tells him, without telling him, that solved is the word he will not let replace found. The door with the D4 tag opens because doors are faith-based technology, an act of belief that space will change when a sliver of metal asks it to. The unit inside is empty now, tenant turned memory, memory turned dust. But dust has a way of keeping shape where a table once sat, where a bed once sagged, where a body once held still. The detective's flashlight arcs and catches a wall tattooed with nail holes in a pattern almost musical. The floorboards mutter under the weight of the curious. The window had bars, and the bars had paint tick marks at intervals you only notice when you're already noticing everything. Measure twice, lock once. Headline corner. 2 doors, 1 story, missing witness. The father stands in the doorway and allows himself exactly 1 second of vertigo. He imagines his daughter's reflection in the glass, his daughter's shoe squeaking on this floor, his daughter's head turned at the wrong question. He steps back into the hall and breathes the oxygen that awaits the living. The camera in the interview room still watches. The suspect looks at the table like it will tell him how to sit. The detective slides the hair found in the spine of the blank notebook into the light, as if photons can make a stronger case than words. The lab calls this hair persuasive but not decisive. It carries a story but speaks a dialect your machines must learn phonetically. The suspect watches the hair with something like pity. He says he used to sweep hair by the kilo, bag it for women who made wigs under ceiling fans, hair that never learned the names of its donors and never needed to. He says hair circulates. He says it is the most social part of the body. He says if you are looking for a signature, you came to the wrong organ. The detective doesn't write that down because he hates clever. He prefers stubborn. He asks again about the keys. Keys are autobiography in metal. The suspect explains without being asked. You stamp the blank, you file the teeth, you dust the edge with graphite to make the bite go easy. Too sharp and it won't feed. Too dull and the lock chews. A man who understands doors understands people. A key wants to fit something. A person does too. The map seller had a way of laughing that flinched. The widow had a way of waiting in the alley door when she wanted privacy dressed up as coincidence. The suspect, if pressed, will say the blue gate had been painted over a less honest color. He will say his shop's bell belonged to a bicycle no one rides anymore. He will say the girl with the notebook made him wish he knew how to ask what story she thought she was inside. Witnesses reappear because time is not linear in a city that keeps past and present stacked like bowls within bowls. The pharmacist who misremembered the day arrives with a plastic bag of apologies in the form of biscuits. She sits near the board and points with a nervous finger, not at the photos, but at the spaces between them where she swears she sees meaning. She remembers a young man, not from that night but from that week, who bought iodine with the tenacity of someone who meant to clean a scene, not a wound. She remembers his hands shaking on the change. She remembers he turned to leave and then turned back to ask, "Do you sell silence?" It was a joke that arrived too late to be funny. She tells the detective this as if she is finally paying a debt that accrued interest at the rate of 1 breath withheld per minute for 26 years. A Tsiom driver returns because guilt is a kind of leash. He says he might have driven her not south but nowhere, which is easy when you loop the same streets until your passenger mistakes movement for distance. He says he had a passenger that night who changed her mind twice and then said nothing for the rest of the ride, like someone who had already arrived somewhere else and was humoring the vehicle. He remembers rain on his ears and a male voice behind them somewhere saying the word that makes everyone behave, police. He remembers the word phantom not being said out loud, only implied in the way the streetlight flickered over a face that could have been a warning or a mirror. He folds his cap in his hands until the fabric makes a sound like paper giving up. At Juan Kiem, the lake writes its slow syllables in light. People walk the rim like hands tracing the edge of a bowl for a chip that isn't there. Someone releases a turtle charm into the water and watches it sink while pretending it floats. The father stands at the place where his daughter used to stand because bodies believe in repetition as a spell. He says the suspect's name out loud and listens to the lake say it back wrong. He wonders, for a soft, dangerous second, if solve can mean we have a name rather than the right one. He shivers and blames the breeze. He watches a boy feed crumbs to fish and sees in the scattering the exact pattern of pages riffling when someone is trying to find the place where they left off. The lab works because that is what labs do. Convert patience into certainty. By degrees you can plot and argue. The partial profile from the umbrella thread hums now near the thumbprint's ghost from 2001 and nearer still to a profile pulled from a cigarette butt found beneath the widow's back stair. The butt might be the suspect's, but cigarettes are the city's common language, and translation introduces errors. The technician runs the models again because ritual is a way to keep despair from thinking it lives here. Confidence climbs. Numbers behave. The detective prints the chart even though charts look like lies to people who bury daughters. He wants to hold the climb in his hands, to feel progress textured. He tapes the chart to the board and writes beneath it, "Almost there." He then crosses it out, embarrassed by hope. The suspect's lawyer breathes through her nose like a swimmer between strokes. She scripts answers and scripts silences and knows which will do better on camera. She files motions that are less about law than about weather. Slow the storm, redirect it, dissipate. She does not know if her client is guilty, and this ignorance makes her honest in a way that unnerves everyone. She hates the word solved because it implies that justice is a puzzle with only one image on the box. She looks at the keys and thinks, not for the first time, that anyone with a shop and a bell is vulnerable to blame when the city wants a shape to pour fear into. Back in the two-door building, the new tenants have painted over whatever the last ones wrote on the walls about love and rent. The alley still smells like rain and frying oil. A man in a white shirt squeegees water into a reluctant drain. The detective stands where the stair breaks into the landing and notices finally a small wound in the wood at hip height. Gouge polish around it from fingers worrying the edge for years. He rests his hand there and feels the groove take it, as if the building were a glove that remembers its first owner. He follows the banister's curve the way a reader follows the sentence that carries the secret. At the top landing, a thin line of darker paint frames a rectangle on the wall, a ghost portrait where something once hung. The shape says, certificate or calendar or mirror. If a mirror, what did it show? The blue gate when open, the face of a girl arriving, the face of a man closing the door to keep something in or out or both. The detective stands in the quiet and lets the questions breathe. Then he takes a photo and pretends he did not feel watched. Night returns, less decisive this time, like a curtain that snagged and has to be pulled twice. The city gets louder to prove it is not listening. The news cycles chew the same bone. The voiceover moves with them, but not like them, unwilling to settle for the shout when the whisper tells more. It remembers the map seller's receipt book, its blank carbons fluttering like moths that perished in a collection. It remembers the widow's two doors and the way neighbors used to say you could enter one and exit the other and arrive older by a year. It remembers the father's red string trembling on the bridge in a wind no one else felt. It remembers the word phantom circled twice, a circle inside a circle, like eyes drawn on a paper bag to teach fear a face. And then, because cold cases are more honest than hot ones about the speed of revelation, nothing. A day with no new witness, no new match, no new headline. The suspect sleeps, the mother does not. The detective rearranges the board not because it helps, but because motion at least insults stagnation. The father walks less today because feet resent labor performed for faith. The city inhales rain and exhales steam. Silence pools where answers might have stood if they had any manners. But silence is also evidence. It says a door was opened at a time when doors weren't, that a bell rang and no one sold anything, that a map was purchased that outlined a route no one should know by heart. Silence says that in a room with two doors you can stage an exit as an arrival if you control who blinks and when. Silence suggests a second man, or a woman with a better memory than mercy, or a debt paid in keys rather than cash. Silence hints that the word phantom was less about a ghost than about ownership, a claim to work done without being seen, a watermark stamped on other people's nights. The voice lays these on the table and smooths them as you would a map before a journey you did not choose. It does not summarize, it does not promise. It does what the father does, keeps moving in place, footsteps marking time in a corridor that still smells like rain. Morning breaks like glass you don't dare sweep. Headlines feel heavier today, as if ink gained weight overnight. Solved, arrest, closure. The city repeats the words until they lose flavor. The father waits for the aftertaste anyway. The detective watches the board and hates its patience. The suspect sits in a room that is all angles and asks for tea because tea keeps your hands learning something gentle. The lab calls and says, "Bring the receipt book." Not the pages with numbers, the blanks. Blank is a misnomer. Paper remembers the pressure of the hand that passed over it. Indentations ghost down to the next sheet, then the next, like a whisper teaching itself to echo. The technician lays the carbons flat under a low light and rubs a soft graphite block across them as if shading the air. Lines rise. Letters appear like shy fish surfacing. D4/marks, a date scrawled half-heartedly, Nov 4, then a symbol that isn't a letter at all, more like a bell sketched mid-ring. The next page gives more when coaxed. PHNTM, vowelless, as if even written language agreed to the game of hiding in plain sight. The detective takes the book to the interview room and slides it open the way you would slide a confession across a table if you had one. The suspect looks at the revealed grooves as if they were the dead resurrected. He says he did not write that. He says carbons carry anyone. He says he used to sell receipt blanks to stalls that feared the tax man more than thieves. He repeats his education in ambiguity until it sounds like prayer. The detective lets the silence lean. Silence is heavier when your innocence has no furniture to sit on. The father arrives with a plastic bag of tapes labeled in the handwriting of a man who refuses to admit he has grown older. The labels are precise. Bridge 2003 dawn. Map shop bell 2007 noon. Alley with 2 doors. Rain. He plucks one without ceremony and feeds it to a machine the station keeps only because some ghosts insist on analog. The tape whirs. The room fills with the thin soup of old sound. Wind baked flat, distant engines, a ring. The ring is wrong in a way only someone who has listened too often can tell. It rings too long. It rings as if it had assistance, a finger on the bell's throat to hold the note, a signature flourish no one requested. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The detective plays it 3 times and the room grows crowded with bells. The map seller, a man who has aged without changing, recognizes his own door's bell by its second syllable. He says the suspect once fixed it for him, unasked, after a week of customers complaining that the ring sounded like a cough. He says the suspect liked bells the way some men like dogs, loyal, eager, easy to train. The suspect shrugs a shrug rehearsed across years. He says bells are bells. He says anyone can fix one if they have pliers and patience. He says a bell doesn't confess, people make it speak. Hangdow coughs up a VHS cassette nobody wanted. A tailor finds it lodged behind a cabinet when he moves shop for cheaper rent. Wedding footage, he says, not mine. He brings it to the station because the city taught him that abandoned things belong to the police or to the river, and he has always preferred officials to water. They push it into a machine that hiccups before playing. The picture smears, resolves, smears. A bride floats, luminous, as if she were invented by the camera. Cigarettes glow like votives. In the background, a window open to the alley that matters. The alley with 2 doors. The blue gate sulks, half closed. The bell rings, long, low. The signature. The camera wobbles to catch an uncle dancing. And in that wobble, a sliver of the street outside. A black umbrella, a pause at the gate, a figure just the right height and wrong to be certain, then gone into the slice of blue. The room forgets to breathe. The detective rewinds with care that shames him. The father leans so far forward he has to catch his balance on the table. They watch the second it plays like a card trick. Umbrella, pause, gate, ring that is more a hum, entry, then nothing. Noise eats detail. The band gropes a sentimental tune into being. Someone laughs too close to the microphone. A relative claps in time that is not time at all. The detective stares past the light into the message the frame tries to hide. The suspect says he has seen the alley before. He says everyone has seen an alley like that. He says umbrellas were black that season. He smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, administratively. The camera, dutiful, shows a man in profile near the widow's door. His face is almost the suspect's face, but pixelation makes liars of certainty. Almost villain, almost mirror. The lawyer exhales hard through her nose and asks for better evidence than ghosts on tape. Better evidence arrives the way rain arrives. The sky had planned it while you made other plans. The technician who rubbed the receipt carbons wants a look at the blank notebooks from the attic. Their pages are unused, too clean. But the spine isn't. Cloth hides stories. Under magnification, the spine's weave holds particles the eye elides. Graphite, the fine talc of ground key shavings, and a bright fleck that does not belong. Enamel. Enamel the color paint manufacturers call lacquer river blue, a nickname born from a brand that supplied municipal gates in the late 90s. The technician smiles the way a hunter might when the wind tells him it has turned in his favor. She files the fleck into the machine, runs the comparison, cross-references purchase lots, and then says the quiet part, a limited run, delivered to 3 districts, used on 27 pieces of street furniture and exactly 1 known gate at D4. The boards don't usually clap, but you can hear wood creak with agreement. The detective and father walk back to D4. The gate stands with its history shut. The new tenant says permission like a kindness he learned this week. They run a swab along the inside bar where a palm would rest for balance while the other hand worked a stubborn key. The swab dries to evidence with a dignity that pleases no one. A partial palm ridge sings a note the databases half remember from the taxi window of 2001 and the cigarette butt by the back stair. The chorus begins to find a harmony that resembles a person. Numbers stack. Confidence climbs. This time the detective does not print a chart. He memorizes the slope and nails it behind his eyes. The widow's cousin appears because lawyers and deaths flush relatives from walls. She remembers the widow's rule. Never open both doors at once. Never let the alley see the street. Never let the street see the alley. She remembers a man who visited through the alley door with his hat in his hands and his eyes on the mirror that hung at the top landing, a mirror placed to make arrivals watch themselves become exits. She remembers nights when the bell rang and the widow said, "Not for me," and yet crossed the floor. She remembers the autumn of 1999 when the widow began writing dates on scraps of paper and hiding them under the foot of her bed as if she had run out of calendar. She brings one scrap she found when clearing the room. 411, a small drawn bell. The word moon, borrowed. Borrowed what? Time, door, girl. The cousin wants to be helpful and wants to be done. The suspect's lawyer asks for everything, receives much, performs triage. She lines up the swabs, the flecks, the rings, the carbons, the tape of the tape. She draws an invisible circle around solved and writes to herself, solved for whom? She interviews the map seller and does not dislike him. She interviews the neighbor who counted the umbrella's taps and does not doubt her. She interviews the father and resents her own role in making him speak his grief, as if it were relevant to the math. On the record, her voice is sanded smooth. Off it, she allows a splinter. If my client is guilty, he is guilty like the city, through accumulation. Keys, maps, bells, receipts, not one of them kills you. Together, perhaps they curate a night. The voiceover follows, relentless. It pads the corridors and slides its back against doors to feel the vibration of what is said behind them. It notes that the suspect's alibi for the precise hour is a library book checkout whose stamp is smeared to illegibility, that the librarian died in 2010, leaving only a ledger that seems to have learned ambiguity from a bell, that the XE Ohm driver who looped streets remembers now the smell of wet lacquer up close, and the smell is the sort you can taste for an hour after. It notes that the widow's 2 doors are now 1 because the new tenant refuses superstition disguised as architecture. It notes that the father's shoes have learned the city anew so many times he could draw Hanoi blind and still place the lake within a finger's width of true. A young constable, bored with being junior, makes himself useful by going where everyone else forgot to go, the basement where seized property sleeps. The shelf marked Keys Various is an altar to good intentions. He opens a box labeled 2000-2004 and finds, beneath a tangle of metal that could unlock a ghost train, a ring of tags in the suspect's handwriting. He recognizes it now from the carbon's implied script. The tags list colors like a painter's pocket: blue gate, green grill, red shutter, black door, D4, D2, D, smudge. He turns one over and finds a scratch he thinks accidental, then realizes scratches can be deliberate. The scratch is a letter, P. The next tag, H. He lines them up on the floor like word tiles succumb to fatigue. Phantom arranges itself without his help. His breath goes foolish. He yells for the detective and instantly regrets yelling in a room where everything is supposed to keep quiet until it learns how to accuse properly. The suspect watches the lined-up tags as if they are showing him a trick he taught years ago and forgot he invented. He says the scratch letters could be anyone's aftermarket joke. He says locksmiths scratch notes to themselves because ink mistrusts pockets. He says he lent those tags to another shop when his stock ran thin. He says he fixes bells. He doesn't ring them alone. He says the widow liked keys for the idea of control, that she lived between 2 doors because some people prefer thresholds to rooms. He says the girl with the umbrella had a look he recognizes in journalists and thieves, the look of someone who believes there's a door you can open and walk through into the center of the truth. He says the truth has no center. He folds his hands back into their patient shape and lets the camera blink its red eye until it looks like a wound that learned to behave. The father asks to hold the tags. The law says no until the detective says yes. The metal is cold in the father's palms, then warms. He listens the way some people listen to shells for the ocean that pretends to live there. He hears nothing, of course. He feels weight. He counts scratches with a thumb that remembers a small child's hairline. He hands them back and says a simple sentence that reorganizes the room. If these were letters on my daughter's desk in 1999, she would have turned them into a headline. Evening arrives as if it has been practicing its entrance. The city puts on lights like jewelry. The lake throws mirror versions of the living back at their feet. News anchors rehearse the solemnity of updates and try not to enjoy it. The station hums. The board grows heavy with more thread, more photos, more paper that tries to be proof. The lawyer files a motion, the lab files a report, the detective files a silence under the category "Don't trust this calm," because calm lies. Calm suggests the case will now cruise toward an ending fit for print. Calm forgets that 1999 had weather, and the weather learns you when you stare at it for long enough. The forecast is disturbance. A courier arrives with a brown envelope that traveled a long road through offices, dust, and neglect. Inside, a form, stamped and counterstamped, requesting replacement keys for a municipal padlock at D4 dated November 3rd, 1999, signed by a name that matters now for the first time, the widow's, in a hand steady enough to be borrowed. And beneath the signature, a note to the locksmith in an ink that is not hers. Bring bell. Bring bell. 2 words like a door half open. 2 words that make the suspect choose a story. 2 words the father will carry to the lake and let the ripples translate. The detective reads them aloud and hears the shape of a plan dressed up as maintenance. The suspect says many people said many things. The lawyer says handwriting analysis is a science only when it behaves. The voice keeps moving because stopping would be a kind of sleep, and sleep is a luxury for stories that end. Cold case, solved, shock in community, strange mon moi. The headline chorus hums under the city's breath. Above it, another rhythm starts. The bell's long ring, the one you cannot unhear once it becomes the metronome for what followed. The 2 words sit on the table like a coin spun and left to wobble. Bring bell. The envelope's dust is the color of old decisions. The detective presses the page flat with 2 fingers as if smoothing a shirt before the photograph that will never stop being taken. The father reads the note and feels the air thin by a measurable amount. The suspect looks at the handwriting as if it's a joke told in a language he claims to half understand. The lawyer says chain of custody before anyone can say what the words make them feel. The technician asks for the envelope because paper bleeds stories if you convince it you are paying attention. That night, the station draws maps on the whiteboard that are less geography than choreography. Door to bell, bell to key, key to palm, palm to blue paint. Timelines. Braid, November 3rd, request for replacement lock. November 4th, rain and umbrella. November 5th, first report filed. November, forever. The case turning into a room you can't leave by the door you entered. The detective takes a pen and writes, not to the board but to himself. Who tells whom to bring what? He draws an arrow from bring to bell, then stops because the arrow wants to keep going, to leap from bell to who rings it, from ring to who freezes at the sound. The technician opens the envelope like a surgeon with manners. Tiny flakes slide onto black velvet under a lamp that has learned to look awake. Fibers catch and confess. 1 red thread not from the father's string or the boards, a smudge of graphite that twists into nothing, a speck of lacquer that glows the particular blue of D4 even under disrespectful light. In the fold where the paper was licked, there is no saliva left to coax into a profile. Time chews its evidence. But the corner carries a kiss of perfume, cheap floral, the kind you buy to smell like somewhere else. The widow, the cousin later says, wore none. The widow smelled like rice and coins. Someone else handled the paper. Headline sketch. Maintenance order masks message. New trace emerges. The detective goes looking for bells. Not metaphor, not memory. Actual bells. Stubborn metal mouths. He inventories every bell within 10 doors of D4 in 1999. Most are gone, replaced by silent buzzers that let the future in without letting it announce itself. A few survive, their voices lowered by rust. He asks the suspect about bell models and mounting screws. The suspect explains as if he's teaching a child to tie knots. Some are sprung, some are weighted. Some take to weather the way cats take to water. He says he liked the sprung kind because you could coax a longer ring if you knew where to hold. He holds up his fingers to show the grip, and the camera zooms with an appetite that embarrasses the lens. The widow's building offers up another story when it realizes the detective is gentle with old wood. At the landing where the mirror once hung, the paint around the rectangle tastes of smoke if you lick it. And the detective does not, but he has a constable who will. Cigarette smoke alien to the room, a brand the city used to love when it still believed in roadside romance. The same brand as the butt under the back stair. The constable coughs. The detective thanks him without smiling. The angle where a person would stand to adjust hair or alibi faces the blue gate at precisely the degree you'd need to watch who enters and exits through the other door without offering anyone the courtesy of a goodbye. The widow's cousin arrives with a new detail because memory, once bribed, keeps trying to pay you back. The mirror cracked once, a hairline from top left to mid-right, in the month before the girl vanished. It was replaced in a hurry, badly. And for a week the reflection made everyone who looked thinner and meaner. She laughed the first time. She did not laugh the second. The father returns to the map seller not for answers, but for the sound of the bell in person. The bell is gone. The seller shrugs. Renovation, landlord, progress. He has kept the bracket, though, a sentimental bracket that holds the absence of a bell as if absence had weight. On the bracket, a smear of finger grease fossilized into a gray sheen, and under it, tiny scratches where someone once filed a burr smooth. The suspect has a way of filing burrs smooth. The bracket goes into an evidence bag like a breath held. In the interview room, the suspect would like to talk about seasons. He says 1999 was the year rain changed its mind halfway down, the year you could wear the wrong jacket all day and nothing would punish you. He says some doors swell in the wet and reveal their grudges. He says he brought a bell once when a widow asked for a lock, because sometimes you need to teach a door to announce dignity. The lawyer's shoe taps a slow denial under the table, a Morse code for stop romanticizing metal. The suspect leaves his hands flat on the table, palms down, prints offered like a bored saint's. The camera watches for a tremor and is disappointed. A package arrives from a storage unit run by a man who claims to have invented inventory. Inside, banners from a long-ago civic celebration, a stack of clipboards with brittle rubber bands, a box of municipal padlock cores like small iron hearts. One core wears a sticker, D4. The detective weighs it like a coin that could pay a toll at a bridge between now and then. Keys nearby, uncut blanks, and one cut to a code the suspect would have recognized on sight. The lab drags a brush across the core's throat and pulls a whisper of skin that sits at the edge of possibility. Not enough for a full song, enough for a hum that rhymes with the thumbprint, the palm ridge, the butt. Numbers climb again, that careful, irritating climb that refuses to let anyone declare victory with a sentence. The detective does not print the chart, he feels the slope in his teeth. The tape recorder makes a second appearance. The father finds a cassette labeled Alley Bell Night. He doesn't remember making it. Grief records things you don't recall consenting to. On it, the bell rings long, then short, then long, a pattern the suspect's hands demonstrate without effort, finger here, pressure there, release. In the background, a voice speaking not words but cadence, the rhythm of instruction. The lab clears the sound like a window wiped with an old t-shirt. The cadence resolves into a tone the father knows without knowing why. Someone who taught school once, or practiced teaching. The widow, the suspect, a second man the city allowed to be first because the camera never found him. The detective writes on the board, teacher, and underlines it twice. He hates the word because teachers deserve better than implication, and because he has a teacher somewhere in his bones who would scold him for the sloppiness of inference. The city contributes its own footnote. A clerk in an office that cataloged street furniture before a software ate the job finds a ledger. In the margin next to D4's entry is another word written at a slant that suggests a different hand than the rest. Phantom, no vowels, the same stunt as the carbon. A habit then, not an accident. A watermark stamped across different paperwork by someone who enjoyed being the only person in the room who got the joke. The clerk is embarrassed by his excitement. He worked decades for men who never once asked him a question that had an answer worth his time. He brings the ledger in and apologizes for the coffee stain on page 34. The detective shakes his hand like he's rescue crew. The neighbor who counted the umbrella taps dreams for the first time in years. In her dream, the bell is a metronome and the street is a staff of music and umbrellas open in precise time to whoever conducts the rain. She wakes and decides to put her dream where someone can use it. She shows the detective her tiny apartment calendar from 1999. She keeps them all in a shoebox, every year a flip book of obligation and weather. On November 4th, she wrote two things, Muolon and Chungdai. Big rain, long bell. Her handwriting in 1999 is younger and angrier. She had headaches then. The detective copies the words and the way the pen dug too deep. The lawyer glances at the calendar and files the look under inadmissible, persuasive. Boe. A witness nobody noticed before because he is exactly the kind of person nobody notices walks into the station with his hat in both hands. A former municipal painter, retired. He did blue work. He knows the lacquer run by its smell, not its color. He says in late October he was pulled from a routine repaint to do a private job paid like public. Paperwork saying city, cash saying don't ask. He says he painted a gate that had been painted badly the week before by someone who used the wrong thinner. He says he watched a man stand at the landing and look into a mirror and adjust a hat he wasn't wearing, and the man winked at himself. He says he doesn't like remembering that wink. He identifies the suspect only in the way people identify clouds. Maybe that shape, maybe that other. He identifies the bell by humming. His hum is perfect. The lawyer requests a recess no court has scheduled because she needs a moment not to drown in evidence that behaves like weather. Cumulative, moody, everywhere if you stay outside long enough. She asks the suspect quietly what phantom means to him. He says a craftsman's tag. You mark work without signing it. He says he learned to scratch letters small because people distrust signatures on things that should arrive anonymous. He says phantom is what people see when they've already decided they will. He says he could have loved the girl with the notebook if she had been born to the part of the city that turns its face to light. The father returns to the lake because good habits keep people from breaking. He watches a turtle surface, the shell dull as if it carried every headline of the last month on its back. He thinks about teachers and bells and hands that know how to persuade metal to change its mind. He thinks about Bring Bell and what it means to invite a sound into a space. He wonders if his daughter heard the long ring as a promise or a trap. He cannot unhear it now. The bell has nested in his ears like a patient insect. Night tucks itself around Hanoi again, but the corners are sharp. The detective sits at his desk long after the building empties. He takes the tags that spelled Phantom and lines them along a ruler, measuring not the letters, but the spacing, because spacing is personality in a language without font. He compares it to the spacing in the scratched letters on the bracket, to the indentation widths on the carbons, to the ledger scrawl. It almost matches. It almost incriminates. It almost absolves. Almost is the only adverb left alive in this room. The detective writes one more word on the board before he can't stand the marker's smell. Motive. He underlines it not because he's found it, but because underlining is prayer in ink. In the two-door building, the new tenant dreams of alarms. He wakes to a sound that might be memory, might be a neighbor, might be the building remembering its lines. He opens only one door. The superstition has colonized him. In the crack of night that leaks into the hall, dust floats like proof caught off duty. He steps back and shuts the door with the care of someone trying not to wake an era. At dawn, the suspect's teacup leaves a ring on the interview table shaped like an eclipse. He turns it absent-mindedly until the stain is a perfect O. The camera catches the gesture the way a lake catches the moon, faithfully enough to make you forget distortion exists. The detective enters with a file that looks heavier than paper permits. He sits. He does not smile. He places a single municipal padlock core in front of the suspect like an egg. He says, very simply, "Teach me the bell." The suspect closes his eyes as if bathing. He raises his hand and, in the air between them, rings the sound neither of them can hear and both of them remember. Long, short, long. The room seals around the rhythm. Somewhere near the lake, a bird takes off as if the air just learned its cue. Headlines sharpen their pencils but hold back. Cold case. Solved. Shock in community. Mon Moi Kila. Missing word. Why? The city leans in. The voiceover does not pause. Will not break the spell by summarizing. It runs a thumb along the edge of Bring Bell until the skin warms. It follows the suspect's invisible gesture through the corridor of 1999. It keeps the scene lit but unclaimed. It does what it has done since page 1. Hold the door half open, let the air of both rooms meet. Refuse to tell you which way to step. Morning puts a thumbprint on the glass and fogs the city to softness that doesn't last. The detective carries the padlock core in his pocket like a hot stone and walks the perimeter of D4 as if the geometry might confess. The father keeps pace, not with steps, but with a listening that has grown athletic. The suspect stays seated in the interview room and teaches silence how to look employed. The lawyer edits her face into something the camera cannot accuse of feeling. The bell, invisible in this room, keeps ringing anyway. Long, short, long. It laces the receipt carbons, threads the bracket, drapes itself over the ledger where PHNTM has been hiding like a watermark for 2 decades. It haunts the tape recorder until the whir becomes a second bell under the first. Bring bell. As instructions go, it's too simple to be innocent. It's a password that can cross rooms. A constable who still loves the part of the job that lets him snoop legally comes back from the municipal archives with a cardboard coffin of permits nobody asked for. He spreads them on a table and they insist on being read in the wrong order. Here a notice about alley clearance. Here a complaint from a tenant who heard footsteps at hours footsteps don't bother to knock. Here a requisition for replacement screws for a bell bracket, 2 sizes, bought twice. And here, tucked behind a page that smells like toner and apology, a fold-out map of service corridors running behind the buildings like an extra circulatory system. The map is stamped instructional, then stamped obsolete, then stamped missing. The father watches the lines bloom into a route that could have let anyone pass from the alley door to the street door without weather. He pushes a finger along the ghost corridor and feels it land right where the widow's mirror used to teach faces their roles. The detective doesn't smile. He draws the corridor on the station board in a heavier ink, then holds the marker over the word motive without underlining. The room rearranges itself around the new possibility. Not a single performance, but staging. Not a single actor, but roles. Not chance, but rehearsal. You don't bring a bell unless a sound is part of the plan. You don't open one door if the other doesn't promise you something. You don't write PHNTM unless you want a future reader to look up. The suspect blinks as if woken in a theater while everyone else knows the next line. He says maintenance breeds, paperwork breeds rumor. He says the corridor was a rumor first. He says he cut 2 keys for 1 lock because some locks prefer twins. The lawyer says none of this is proof and all of it is narrative. She is right and she is irrelevant. They walk the route that the obsolete map whispers, D4's alley, a refuse hatch disguised as disrespect, a low passage behind a bakery's warm wall, a panel whose screws show a paler circle where a bell once learned to live. The city, being older than everyone in this story, has ways of forgetting without erasing. On the panel's lip, a crease of blue lacquer hangs on like stubborn sky. The technician lifts it with a breath and files it with the other fleck. The numbers will do what numbers do. The detective tries not to want them to hurry, want Ben's math toward mistakes. At the station, the father asks to hear the wedding video again. He is not greedy for images. He is a connoisseur of the sound he cannot unlearn. They watch the scene that isn't a scene, find the umbrella that isn't evidence, listen for the ring that is. Someone claps offbeat as if trying to spook luck. The bell's long note hangs, and the father says, without raising his voice, that the ring is a rope, the ring is a cue, the ring is instruction for a corridor no one sees. He doesn't know he's right, only that the sentence makes his lungs behave. The detective writes rope on the board and circles it with the kind of pressure that tears paper. A retired traffic officer, the kind who remembers faces far better than names, arrives with a memory he didn't trust until the headline gave him permission. He used to stop by the widow's alley for tea because a life spent raising a whistle to your mouth makes you crave smaller noises. He remembers a bell that rang long twice the week before the girl vanished, and each time a man at the top landing timed his step to the fade, moving when nobody could hear a footfall. He demonstrates with his own body a ghost choreography on linoleum. The suspect watches and says bells hide clumsiness. He says he learned that when he was a boy and wanted to sneak out with the dog. Everyone looks at him as if he has confessed to poetry. He shrugs like a person who has been misunderstood by better audiences. In a drawer labeled too small to matter, the constable finds a coil of thin wire, municipal property tagged in 1998, checked out by no one, returned by no one, found in an envelope under a category that never earned a category, repairs of uncertain origin. Wire with a memory, the technician says. You bend it and it keeps a ghost of the bend. The suspect once mentioned wire when describing how to teach a bell to ring longer. He called it a leash. Nobody wrote it down then because it sounded like pride dressing as invention, and now it sounds like a sentence shifting its weight from maybe to yes. The widow's cousin returns with a busted shoebox and the tired triumph of someone who has beat a house at hide and seek. Inside, photographs shot on a camera that loved flash, dates scribbled in the border, a mirror throwing noise at the lens, a long cord hanging from the bell bracket that wasn't there later, a hand, blurred, reaching up to pull it and make the ring behave. The detective stacks the photos in order and a small film plays. Install, test, repaint, hide. The last picture is cut by the lab's guillotine for the slide mount years ago. Half a face goes missing at the edge, and the half we keep is all cheekbone and almost recognition. The father looks because fathers look. He looks until his eyes water from the future trying to squeeze in. The suspect asks for a cigarette and does not get one. He says he could replicate the ring on any bell in this city with 2 inches of sprung steel and a child's patience. He says that doesn't make him guilty. It makes him competent. He says when people want to believe in a phantom, they will recruit any craftsman to play the hands. The detective doesn't argue with competence. He argues with proximity. He argues with the way the padlock core hummed at the same pitch as the taxi window's print. He argues with letters scratched on the backs of key tags as if a man, perhaps this man, perhaps another, wanted his joke to leave a trail for an audience he never planned to meet. Night comes fast, as if it had an appointment. The board is a sea of red lines now, and each line trembles when someone closes a door. The lawyer files a motion to exclude the wedding tape as prejudicial and wins the point for a day, which is what points are good for. The lab calls and lets numbers do their polite climb towards something you can say without lying. The father steps outside and finds the air contains a bit more bell than usual. He stands by the street and counts breaths until the count becomes a rhythm his daughter might recognize if she is allowed to visit the living by the slenderest of permissions. A new witness announces himself by standing where the lake throws back faces and asking to be looked at. He is a teacher. He retired in 2002 and lives alone with books that have stopped teaching him because he learned not to be teachable on purpose. He says he came for the headline and stayed for the cadence. He says the voice on the tape, the one hidden behind the bell's long note, belonged to a man who taught at night for extra money in a room above the widow's second door. He remembers the way the man's sentences landed, each with a downbeat at the end as if punctuation were immoral. He remembers the word phantom, not said in English, but in a slang that turned it into something else, a brand of pride. He cannot give the detective a name. He can give him the shape of a throat. He hums the cadence. It meets the bell's ring halfway and bows. The suspect stares at the teacher like an unflattering mirror. For a second, the room rooms. The lawyer puts her hand flat on the table to keep the air still. The detective says nothing because he has learned by now that talking can reduce the volume of truth. They go back to the 2 doors with the teacher in tow. He stands at the landing where the mirror used to insist on self-inspection and says the man he remembers would practice talking to himself there, not vanity rehearsal. He would count under his breath. He would lift his hand and lower it as if conducting a choir no one else could hear. The suspect inhales and his breath leaves him as a sound too soft for the tape to catch. He closes his eyes and stands in the same place, lifts his hand, lowers it in time to a ring that no longer exists. He opens his eyes and meets the father's gaze, a meeting that ruinizes all other meetings for a while, and says a sentence that refuses to choose a side. Bells make men bolder than they mean to be. On the floor, a nail head winks, fresh wood in old. The constable kneels and pulls it with the delicacy of someone removing a splinter from a child. It releases a smell like damp lacquer and old tobacco. Beneath the nail, a slip of paper darkened to the color of tea. On it, in skeleton handwriting, 2217, bring bell, blue. The teacher reads it as if grating. He nods at the cadence of the dashes. The father touches his knuckle to the wall, a salute. The suspect says anyone could have written that if anyone had wanted to own a night. The city decides to rain. It does not ask. The sound on the alley's tin is a kind of applause nobody enjoys. The detective stands between the doors and feels history trying to fit into the present like a key in a lock that's been filed by an impatient hand. He knows what tomorrow's headline wants to say. He knows what it should be made to say instead. Cold case, solved, shock in community, odd clue. He wants to add a subtitle the kiosk won't print. Some answers require 2 throats to speak. The lawyer asks for time. Time does not do appointments with the accused. The padlock core sits on the table and listens. The bracket with its smear of polish listens. The coil of wire remembers its last bend. The carbons keep their ghost letters. The map of corridors holds its breath. The bell rings and doesn't. Long, short, long. The father hears it even when the room is honest with its silence. The voice keeps going because the corridor is not done and neither are we. It does not summarize. Summaries are ways stations build to let trains die. It drags its fingers along blue paint that forgot to harden. It counts the distance between a long ring and a step on a stair. It holds the word solved at arm's length and asks it what it thinks it means. It doesn't wait for an answer. It follows the sound down the hall and turns left where the map says left and the city says maybe, and it keeps walking until the echo turns into air. Dawn crawls in on the belly of last night's rain and the city pretends it slept. The detective pretends he did too. The father doesn't bother. The suspect folds a paper cup into a quiet geometry, a small cathedral of pulp that will never stand. The lawyer takes notes on the margin of her own patience. The bell no one can see performs its long, short, long inside every room as if timetables were a kind of weather. The board in the station gets 1 new line, 2217, bring bell, blue. The dash beats like a pulse, 3 marks that insist on sequence. The detective stares until the numbers stop being a time and start being a choreography. He finds himself counting without meaning to. 22 steps to the alley's halfway shadow, 17 seconds of ring to bury a footfall, 3 breaths between doors. He hates numerology, but some nights math keeps the ghosts domesticated. They go live with the corridor, not a reenactment. He despises the theater of it, but a calibration. He brings a bell on a borrowed bracket, fixes it where the paler circle still shows an old mouth once hung. He threads a short leash of sprung wire, the kind that remembers a shape once you teach it. He asks the teacher to stand at the landing and mark cadence with his palm. He asks the father to wait at the foot of the alley where the puddle that used to be an eye still remembers faces. He asks the constable to be the door. He asks the suspect nothing, and the suspect answers anyway by leaning forward so slightly the camera zooms to keep him honest. At 2217, the hour stolen from the slip of paper, they breathe the room into readiness. The bell takes to the hand the way a well-trained dog takes to its leash. Long, short, long. The corridor swallows the note and spits it back thinner. The alley takes the echo and spreads it like butter. On the second long, the teacher lowers his hand and steps the way a man steps when timing is currency. The constable opens the alley door to a crack a shoulder can learn. The suspect's fingertips flex and stop. The father's eyes go to glass. He sees only what 1999 left him to see. 1 step, 2, 3. Silence where sound was supposed to demand attention. In the hush, the detective hears the heart's cousin in the pipe chasing water 2 floors down. the city's private metronome. He hears a shoe catch a nail that wasn't there then. He hears the sound memory makes when it re-enters a room it once owned. They run it again without the teacher's palm, then again without the wire, then once with the bell, hung wrong on purpose to prove intention lives in the difference. The suspect watches like he's grading the craft. When the bracket hums at the second long ring, he smiles in spite of himself, a craftsman's involuntary compliment to a job well done. The camera's red eye drinks it. The lawyer touches his wrist without looking like she meant to. The detective puts a finger to the blue paint that managed not to be painted over on the inward lip of the door. It flakes into confetti and reveals a bit more of the 90s underneath, that dull municipal optimism that thought color could keep a neighborhood honest. He pushes his finger against the jamb where the palm print would live if the palm had earned religion. He doesn't say the word match, he says the word rhyme, because rhyme allows for imperfection and still means something. The teacher stares at the mirror's absence exactly as if it were still there, habit reattaching itself to air. He raises his hand and corrects his posture until a muscle in his neck clicks. He says the man he remembers, if memory is given permission to be certain, would stand perfectly within the rectangle of the frame, like a photograph that taught itself to breathe. He says the cadence he hears in the tape begins with the bell and ends with a sentence about obedience, not as a command, but as a virtue. He says the voice belongs to someone who loved rules because rules hide you in plain sight. The suspect says rules are part names for locks. He has always liked locks that lie about how they open. The father closes his hand around that sentence and holds it until it warms. Headlines begin to crowd the air even before paper agrees to them. Reconstruction tightens net. Bell trick rehearsed. Teacher points to voice above two doors. In the kiosk, a vendor smirks. Hanoi has always loved a magic trick, as long as no one asks whether the box had a trapdoor built by a real carpenter. The lab calls the way thunder calls before it rains. Here, listen. The partial ridge on the inner bar of the Blue Gates frame cooperates with the taxi window's lonely thumb and the cigarette butt's tired boast. The confidence interval crosses a line everyone in this building pretends not to draw in pencil before the printer makes it official. The technician doesn't say match either. She says convergence. She says the line has more slope than doubt. She says the padlock core's music harmonizes now with a second instrument pulled from the bracket's greasy shine, a smear of the same metal polish the suspect has been using since long before he learned to keep receipts. The lawyer asks where the second person is in this duet you keep hearing. She asks with a voice she irons flat, but in the crease you can see the rumor of fairness. The detective answers without love. The city is the second person. She asks again, where is the throat that taught cadence, the voice that loved rules? He does not say the word teacher, even though the teacher stands beside him and hums the bell's tone in solidarity. He does not say the widow because she has been dead long enough that using her name to hold weight would feel like stealing from the honest poor. He does not say phantom because he refuses to honor a watermark with a capital letter. He says conduit. Somebody wanted to move a person through a space without noise. Somebody made noise the camouflage. Somebody took a night class in how to be missing. They opened the panel behind the bakery warm wall, the one the obsolete map taught them to respect. Inside, a space the size of a confession, padded with old moving blankets stapled into compliance. On one blanket, a faint smear the lab will charitably call organic history, rain pushed in by gossip and wickedness. On a nail, hung and forgotten, a ring of 3 tags without strings, smudged to uselessness for anyone but people who have learned to read ghosts. The constable holds them in a cloth and breathes the way one breathes near candles. Even as metal, they are a paper trail that chose different shoes. The suspect stands in the doorway of the space and makes himself very still. Stillness fits him like a well-made coat. He keeps his hands where a camera would want them. He looks at the blankets with nothing on his face except recognition of craft. He says into the quiet that anyone could have built a hush like this. The city has always taught people to disappear in plain sight, under quilts, behind mirrors, beneath bells. The father steps back because air is thin here and he has learned to respect thin air like an elder. A woman from across the alley turns up with a story you might dismiss if you weren't starving. She says in 1999 she spilled soup and looked up to find 2 men at the Blue Gate at once, one with a key, one with his hat in his hands as if hats were currency, and the bell's long ring making the rain look organized. She remembers it because the hat man told a joke and no one laughed. The kind of joke where the punchline is a word everyone is pretending not to know. She cannot spell the word now. She can show the shape her mouth made around it. The teacher nods. That shape. The suspect admits the shape looks like something he once said without meaning to. He is not sure whether this is defense or biography. The board grows a new island, hat, Under it, a list of men comfortable being mistaken for each other, locksmiths, teachers, clerks, the city itself. The detective stares until the chalk threatens to break. He draws a line from hat to PHNTM, from PHNTM to BRKT, from BRKT to 2217, from 2217 to a small square he marks with an X above the widow's landing. The square stands for the person who might have stood there and counted. The square is the whole plot tries to fill with a villain, and life fills with a bureaucrat skilled at being unseen. A thin envelope slides under the station door because guilt can be punctual. Inside, a photocopy of a roster from a night class held in late 1999. Locksmithing for landlords. 10 names, one redacted like a tooth knocked out of a smile, one familiar of shape, the suspects, and 2 that are aliases with ambition. In the margin, a note in the same slant as the ledger that had PHNTM in it. Ring long at blue, count 2. It is not handwriting analysis if a person who once taught learns to recognize his own classroom's bad habits. The teacher circles the slant. He says he knows who graded that assignment with his eyes. He doesn't say the name because names do damage even when they are correct, and he doesn't own the damage. The lawyer clocks the roster and exhales that little swimmer's breath she keeps for when the length of the pool is one stroke too long. She says this is narrative again. She says you have to turn story into statute before anyone is allowed to go home lighter. She is right. The detective almost likes her for being right in a room that grows allergic to the concept. The suspect asks if he may show something, and everyone says no, and then the detective says yes because curiosity owns him the way the lake owns certain moons. The suspect takes the bell off the bracket with care that looks like affection and moves it 2 finger widths to the left. He rings long, short, long with no wire, just thumb and memory. The note lengthens as if the room had been taught another trick. He stands back. He says anyone who worked here would know the sweet spot. He says anyone in love with camouflage would learn to feed the bell until it burped apology. He puts the bell back exactly where the paler circle told him to. The camera records humility and files it under insolence. The father listens as if the sound is a voice choosing a language he might finally understand. He hears in the lengthened ring the extra second his daughter would have had to decide between 2 doors. He hates the second for being insufficient. He loves it for existing at all. He imagines her lifting the umbrella to knock, because umbrellas knock when hands are full of notebook and idea, and the bell, answering like a doorbell, speaks for houses that know how to lie. A man with a scar that keeps its own counsel appears at the station with a map seller's receipt from 1999 that lists no item and is stamped with an ink pad that was tired that week. On the back, in grease pencil, a symbol like a bell mid-ring and a half-word, fan. Then the pencil broke. He says he found it under a floorboard when he fixed a rot 2 winters ago. He kept it because some trash knows how to stare at you. He gives it up because the headline said solved and he wanted to know what solved costs. The father thanks him and calls him brother without hearing himself do it. Night pours itself over the city and leaves fingerprints. The detective sits with the teacher and the father in the 2-door building like men haunting their own rumor. He tries the corridor in his head with a different actor at the landing, a hat man with cadence, a clerk who loves tidy margins, a phantom who is only a watermark and a sense of humor, the city dressed up as a second suspect because it hates standing alone in the dock. He tries it with the suspect absent and with the suspect as the only body in the frame. Each version makes a noise that could be truth if truth weren't so obsessed with details. The lawyer files another motion because paper is how you hold back tide. The lab files another report because numbers are how you offend myth. The suspect sleeps for the length of a cigarette he didn't get to smoke and wakes when a bell he swears he didn't hear rings in his head. The father counts breaths again. The teacher stands at a window that isn't a mirror and watches the lake rehearse being an answer. And somewhere inside these rooms, the word solved clears its throat. It is learning a tone that will pass for closure on kiosks and broadcasts. It is not learning the father's language. It doesn't know how. It is not learning the cities either. Cities do not believe in ending. The voiceover keeps going because the corridor keeps going and because the long ring hasn't finished its job yet. It traces the obsolete maps line with a fingertip and feels heat still there from 1999 as if heat could survive on an idea. It walks the distance between a bell and a breath. It refuses to announce a killer or a saint and chooses, instead, to hold the air exactly where it trembles, to keep the door exactly this open, to let the echo find the person who taught it and ask, not for a confession, but for the courtesy of being named. Morning arrives with the politeness of a clerk. Stamp, nod, next. But the air refuses to file. The detective wakes at his desk with an imprint of the roster on his cheek. the redacted name blacking out part of his skin as if anonymity had hands. The father brings 2 coffees he won't drink. The suspect straightens the paper cathedral he folded yesterday, as if architecture could learn resilience from being destroyed. The lawyer checks for cameras with an instinct now, not distrust, survival. The teacher stands under a ceiling fan and listens to its click like punctuation choosing where to land. They start with the roster because paper, unlike people, stays exactly as guilty as it was when you left it. 10 names, 1 redacted, 2 aliases that wish they were bolder. Next to the suspect's name, the grade is a circle and a check, the mark of a teacher who wants to believe in competence as a substitute for character. The margin note slants. Ring long at blue. Count 2. The teacher nods at the slant like you'd nod to an old tune on a bad radio. He says the man who wrote that strutted even on paper. He says his R's bite the page, his G's hook and swing. The clerk from Street Furniture returns with another ledger and points to the same swing, another year, another margin, the same private grammar. The detective copies every hooked G he can find into a line until the line looks obscene. They go looking for the night classroom because rooms learn voices and keep them around like a smell. The address on the roster is a school annex swallowed by a newer building that insists on glass. In the back, the annex sulks, green paint surrendering to air, a door that sticks and then forgives. Inside, a chalkboard skins one wall. The chalk is gone, but fingers used to do the job when chalk ran out. The teacher drags his hand across the board, and the board coughs up pale breath. In the corner, a brass bell sits in a box the way relics sit, stripped of power but humming with it anyway. The label, hand-scratched, room 2. He rings it because some reflexes are older than counsel, long, short, long. The room recognizes its master and offers back its echo like a dog that never forgot the whistle. The detective walks the perimeter and reads what walls keep even after cleaners try to convince them to forget. A tape rectangle where a timetable used to live, night slots blocked out with the care of a person who believes time is a system you can teach to kneel. A nail at shoulder height where a mirror could have hung if someone wanted students to see how discipline looks on their faces. A faded poster. Rules protect you, with the word protect worn by thousands of eyes into a different verb. The father stands in the doorway and keeps his grief quiet because rooms forgive quiet faster than they forgive noise. The annex caretaker produces a drawer key that refuses to be decent. Inside the drawer, attendance slips that learned mildew, a stack of photocopied worksheets titled Principles of Access, and a cassette labeled Demo, Bell. The label is the same hand as the ledger slant, the G-hooks, the R-bites. They feed the cassette to a battered player with a mouth that chews at first and then settles. The voice that pours out is not a stranger, and it is not family. It is a man in love with his own clarity. He explains bells like a general explains a flank. You use sound to cover movement. You use rhythm to train time. You use repetition because people are animals, and animals can be domesticated into obedience. The teacher looks at his shoes. The father looks at the door. The suspect looks at the speaker as if sound were a material he could file. On the tape, after the lesson, laughter that isn't laughter at all, compliance making a social noise. A question about corridors, an answer that calls them virtues, not escapes. A demonstration you can hear but can't see, long, short, long, a foot moving, a breath taken when the bell will hide it. The class murmurs. The cassette ends with the word phantom, not as a boast, but as a signature you're meant to see if you're clever. The detective rewinds to the split second where a chair leg scrapes. It is the scrape of a person who stood while the others sat because rule makers stand. He freezes on the sound like you can freeze sound. They pull the annex's registers for 1999 and find what bureaucracy leaves when it tries to erase itself. Ink that bled on rainy nights. 2 pages stapled out of order by a person who wanted to trust fingers more than protocol. A receipt book for petty cash with the bell's purchase noted in shorthand, price underlined twice, then a doodle of a tiny hat where other people would put a tick. The hat appears again in a second book, then again in a third, as if a man left breadcrumbs in a city full of crows. The constable circles each hat until the page looks like a parade route. The lawyer paces the annex and says chain of custody in softer tones now, like a person promising the future it will get its turn. The suspect leans his shoulder against the chalkboard and picks up powder on his jacket, the way a man's clothes pick up the room's history if he lingers. The father touches the bell on the desk with 2 fingers, not ringing, just reminding the metal that someone still expects honesty. Back at the two-door building, the obsolete corridor map meets the annex's bell with the enthusiasm of conspirators reunited. The detective tapes the map to the wall and traces it with a pen he promised himself he wouldn't use for drawing. He writes only words, never pictures, because pictures lie better. He can't help it. The corridor requires a line. He adds the annex bell to the corner as if sound could travel on paper. He writes above it, rehearsal space. The teacher corrects him gently, rehearsal habit. The difference is important and hurts. The neighbor who counted taps brings a story she thought beneath the threshold of usefulness. A knock-and-run boy the week before the disappearance, running the alley with a friend, bell long, laughter short, a voice above saying, "Count 2, you little ghost," and the boys counting 2 and then vanishing into the alley's bend. She points to where the voice came from with the certainty grief envies. The teacher closes his eyes because he has said the sentence "count 2" so many times it tastes like chalk. He hears his own cadence in the cruelty and it makes him hate grammar. The lab files their most careful confidence yet, and refuses to call it anything but what it is. The convergence of prints, ridge fragments, metallic polish traces, lacquer flecks, tape cadence, roster slant, bell demo. Nothing perfect. Everything consistent. If the city's standard of proof were a kindness, we would be finished. The standard is not a kindness. It is a door with a specific key. The detective lays the pieces out like a locksmith lays blanks. Here is what we can cut. Here is where we need to file. The father returns to the lake with the cassette in his pocket and does not play it. He has learned that not every sound deserves to be called. He watches a woman teach a child to throw bread and not rocks. He watches the turtle surface at a distance that suggests politeness more than luck. He thinks of classes and corridors and voices that love rules because rules allow you to hide in the shadow they cast. He thinks of the word solved as a fence you can jump if you learn where the soft patch is. A box arrives from a room where courts store boredom. Exhibits that were too dull to keep warm in the front room of history. Inside, municipal gate invoices stamped paid, a list of bell suppliers, and a note written on the back of a receipt with a pen that ran out as it traveled. Test sequence LSL, gate 4, 2217. The hand is the same hand as the annex petty cash. The doodle is the same hat. On the bottom corner, a grease smear that the lab will later claim is duck fat because someone ate while planning. The detective doesn't know whether to laugh or quit. He draws a small duck on the board because sometimes mockery is how you carry outrage without spilling it all over your shoes. The suspect asks for a map and gets one. He traces the obsolete corridor with a nail he doesn't have, just air. He says a night class doesn't make a conspiracy. It makes men feel useful. He says bells are not guilty. They are obedient. He says he cut keys for doors he didn't open and fixed bells for brackets he didn't hang. He says phantom was a word the city wanted because mysteries sell better than maintenance. He says he scratched letters on tags because organization is how you forgive yourself for liking control. He holds the paper up to the light the way a person checks bills, and for a second he looks like a child trying to read his future. The teacher writes his own confession that isn't one. He circled the slant because he hates what the slant belongs to. He says he taught men who liked rules more than they liked people. He says he is sorry for the cadence that made a sentence sound like law when it was just a suggestion with shoulders. He offers voice samples. The lab will take them and go quiet for an honest amount of time. They run the corridor one more time at the precise minute the slip of paper feared. 2217. The bell's long hangs like a curtain half drawn. The teacher lowers his hand and does not step. The father leans in and refuses to blink. The suspect fixes his eyes on the blue flank of door as if looking could repair paint. The constable opens to a notch and holds. In the silence that rushes in after the short ring, the building creaks its old opinion. Doors like to open. It is people who make them hesitate. The detective says nothing, because saying anything now would staple the moment to a meaning it hasn't earned. A man with a mop, the kind of witness the city cultivates with neglect, offers his mop room key ring. On it, a tag with a scratch that looks like the letter O with a hat, some private joke. He says he found it in the annex years ago. Kept it because metal gathers men the way pawns gather flies. The scratch matches the phantom letter spacing not in letter, but in arrogance. The teacher flinches. The suspect looks bored to hide interest. The father breathes the way a swimmer breathes after a long underwater look. News crawls across televisions in noodle shops and glows on phones clenched like talismans. Night class bell linked to D4 trick. Teacher's tape surfaces, corridor map found. The city is a chorus now. Cold case solved, shock in community, mon moi ki la, singing loud enough to drown doubt for anyone who wants to be saved by volume. The detective hears the choir and wants a solo that admits truth rarely sings on key. The lawyer files her cleanest motion yet. Suppress the tape. Contextualize the roster. Call the convergence an orchestra of coincidences. She does it without malice and with a competence that could warm your hands. She is right to try. The detective is right to resist. The father is right to keep watching the space between ring and step like a balcony watching the street it will never enter. In the annex, the chalkboard gives up one last gift when the teacher runs a wet cloth over it. A ghost grid appears, measurements in centimeters, an arc traced from the bell bracket's location to the window, to the door, to the landing's mirror, to the imagined position of the listener. It is a map of a sound. Who draws a map of a sound except someone who wants to own what cannot be owned? At the end of the arc, a small emblem that looks like a bell with a hat. The teacher scratches his own skin at the wrist where a watch would live. He has never worn watches. He resents time for wanting to own him back. Evening reassembles the city into its lit version. A cleaner lie. The two-door building tastes of rain that thinks it's finished. The bell on the bracket is removed and bagged, and the bracket left naked. A negative space. The corridor breathes. The detective gathers the tags that spelled phantom and avoids the urge to rearrange them into a different word. No tamph, phantom, haptum. None of the anagrams land because sometimes a word is a trap you step into with full knowledge. He pockets the urge and leaves the letters in their cloth. The father walks the long way home. Bridge, lake, pharmacy that still sells the wrong day's memory, map shop that keeps its receipts blank because of superstition or convenience. He stops at a blue gate that is not D4 and listens to its quieter cousin. He lifts his hand and does not knock. He stands long enough for the neighbors to decide he is furniture. He goes home and doesn't sleep. He dreams anyway. Long ring, short step, long echo, a door opening to a room where his daughter is writing the word phantom neatly, and then crossing it out in favor of a word the city has not invented yet. The suspect dreams too. He is small, and bells are tall, and he learns that you can lengthen a sound with wire if you love it. He wakes with a feeling that a rule just walked out of the room without saying goodbye. The lawyer does not sleep. She writes sentences on legal paper that resemble prayers shaped into statutes. The teacher sits with the annex bell in his lap for an hour after everyone leaves, not ringing it, not apologizing to it either. He sets it back where he found it and locks the door like a man who understands thresholds deserve manners. And the voice, as ever, declines to explain itself. It follows the map of sound to the landing where mirrors used to teach faces. It places a hand where palm ridges once rehearsed. It listens to the corridor learn its own history. It respects the silent geometry that made a person vanish into a night that pretended to be ordinary. It holds the word solved at a distance that honors grief's arms. It refuses to choose a villain yet, not because it is afraid, but because it knows the city sometimes hires more than one actor for the same role and asks them to enter on the bell. It keeps the door open the width of a breath and says nothing that would allow sleep to win. It lets the bell's echo find the person whose cadence taught it to walk and rehearses, under its own breath, what to say when that person finally steps out of the mirror and claims his hat. The sun rises like an exhausted witness, pale, late, unconvincing. Hanoi wears its usual disguise, noise. Scooters gossip in the alleys, vendors call out the day's optimism, and the lake pretends it forgets what it's been made to remember. But beneath the hum, the pulse of 1999 still thumps, low and steady, like a bell echo hiding under the asphalt. The detective hears it before his first coffee. The father feels it before his first word. The suspect lives with it because there is nothing left to do but live inside its rhythm. The station has learned to smell like rain even on dry mornings. Files bloom across desks, damp, swollen, more alive than they should be. The lab report lies open like an argument already won. Convergence, consistency, shared trace materials, identical polish compound, partial ridge alignment, sequence pattern match. It doesn't say guilty. It never says guilty. It just hums a long note of inevitability. The detective reads it and resents how calm it is. The lawyer reads it and measures the weight of silence she will have to carry to make it mean something else. The father doesn't read it. He just stares at the corner of the paper where the print left a faint circle, as if someone rested a bell there too long. The teacher stands at the board again. Not the annex this time, the station's whiteboard, new, sterile, waiting for shape. He draws the corridor's arc, the bell, the landing, the blue gate, the two doors, the mirror that's gone, but not gone enough. His handwriting trembles, but refuses to stop. Count 2, he writes in the corner. Then beneath it, smaller, rehearsal. He says nothing. The detective watches the chalk squeak against the surface and thinks about fingerprints that don't need fingers anymore. At noon, the city decides to help. That's how it always happens, not through intention, but by accident, through the persistence of strangers who are tired of hearing the same ring. A street cleaner empties a drain near the D4 alley, pulling out what looks like a tangle of wire and luck. Inside the rusted coil, something small glints. A clasp, a keychain loop, an oval tag with half a word still etched. VHAN. It's corroded, almost illegible, but it's enough. It's another ghost signature, another whisper from the past saying, I was here. The detective holds it under light. The suspect looks away. The father closes his hand around it and feels the metal pulse like a heartbeat he didn't expect to find again. The loop of evidence tightens, but closure is a performance, not a verdict. The prosecutor visits with the kind of smile reserved for cameras. He says the words the papers crave: decisive evidence, long-awaited justice, closure for the family. The detective listens and thinks how little those words resemble the ones in his head: pattern, repetition, compulsion. The lawyer folds her arms, polite but dangerous. The suspect stays quiet. It is the most disciplined silence he has ever managed. Night brings ceremony disguised as bureaucracy. They walk the suspect through the blue gate one last time, escorted by flashlights and headlines. The same alley that swallowed a girl now swallows a man who insists on being misunderstood. The rain returns on cue, obedient to the story's symmetry. Cameras flash like lightning, painting guilt on anything that moves. The suspect tilts his head to the side and asks a question so soft it barely survives the air. Who taught you to count? No one answers. Not the detective, not the teacher, not the father. The question lands somewhere between them, heavy as the word solved and just as dishonest. Inside the station, the board waits. The word phantom has been erased, but left an indentation you can feel if you trace the marker's scar. The detective draws a new word where the old one was: echo. He says it under his breath, as if naming it will make it less lonely. The father stands beside him and whispers, "Echoes end when someone listens." The detective doesn't argue. He knows better. Echoes end when someone stops answering. The teacher returns to the annex to lock the door one final time. The bell on the desk, cleaned and tagged, gleams with official obedience now, so another artifact, another silence. He rings it once before the key turns, a small defiance meant only for himself. The sound crawls down the corridor like memory finding a familiar route. It reaches the street and dissolves into the city's pulse, indistinguishable from traffic, rain, breath, long, short, long. The father doesn't go to the hearing. He walks instead, through the streets that learned his grief by heart, past the map shop that no longer sells maps, past the bridge that remembers his red string, past the lake where his daughter once promised to write a story called Phantom Streets. He reaches the same spot by the water and kneels, lowering the corroded tag into the lake. It sinks without ceremony. The ripples reach the turtle's shadow and disappear. He listens for the bell, but hears only the city exhaling. The lawyer gives her final statement under rain. She doesn't defend innocence. She defends the truth's right to remain incomplete. A door, she says, can open from both sides. So can stories. So can guilt. Reporters write it down, and for a moment the truth is allowed to sound like poetry before the news flattens it again. Weeks pass, but time here doesn't move. It loops, it circles, it rehearses. The suspect is gone, absorbed by process. The board is cleared, the files sealed, the city relieved. But in the empty office, the detective keeps one thing pinned above his desk: the roster page from the night class, with that one name blacked out, the absence that feels louder than ink. Every now and then, he traces the shape of the redaction, wondering if the bell rang for one man's hands or two. The voiceover lowers now, softer, steadier. It walks through the quiet city like a reporter who forgot how to file endings. It looks at the closed blue gate, the cleaned bracket, the corridor that hums even when empty. It says what the headlines will not: that no case is ever truly solved if the echo still knows your name, that some sounds survive the verdict, that sometimes justice is just noise arranged neatly. The final shot, Hanoi at midnight, rain making mirrors of every street, the lake breathing, the bell unseen still ringing somewhere in the city's throat, a sound stretched across decades, refusing to die, refusing to explain itself. Long, short, long, and then nothing. Only the quiet after a bell that's learned it will always be heard again.